from Mjolnir, which he raises above him. He reaches out to the altar and commands it to create a divine weapon, and suddenly lightning flashes from it. The guy raises Mjolnir and hits the ingot with it. At that very moment, a bright glow flashes around, and the space is filled with a special, seemingly holy light. People are walking down the street, and the same guy is already standing in the living room of the new workshop, which will soon become the newlyweds' home. His name is Will Craft. He is the fiancé of Sirikal Hassan. The guy looks at someone in surprise. The girl with glasses sitting across from Will calmly says she wants to break off their engagement and casually adjusts her glasses. The boy suddenly becomes indignant. He asks the girl why she decided so. Because this is an engagement that their parents arranged. They agreed. He will take over his father's blacksmith shop, and she, the Hassan trading house. He stands right in front of her and tries to convince her. The girl confesses that the real reason is that she has finally found true love. She looks around and another guy approaches her. He gently takes her hand, hugs her, and kisses her shoulder. Without letting go of the girl, the guy smiles slyly and greets the main character, calling him Brother Will. The protagonist is stunned by what he sees. Now he realizes it was Seaton and asks him when they managed to pull it off. The guy with the same smile tells her that when Sirakel's father died and she was grieving, he was busy with work all the time. But Seth stayed by her side, comforting and supporting her, unlike Will. The main character suddenly exclaims that he had no other choice. He tried with all his might to save the Hassan trading house from ruin. Seth smiles and denies that this is not true. In fact, everything only got better thanks to a random large order that appeared just then. The protagonist looks at this in shock. The girl asks if it's all just a coincidence. The guy thinks about her words. Seaton explains to the girl that after his father's death, he did not break down, did not give up. That is why he is respected. The protagonist, having suppressed his rage, stands up and indignantly asks why they now have a new house and a new store. Seaton turns to his brother, saying that he will have to move, and at the same time apologizes for it. He confidently declares that this is their home, and they are not going to live under the same roof with the girl's ex-husband. The protagonist indignantly asks why they can't live in the house on Syracuse. He emphasizes once again that she can't live with her ex. Seaton informs that the building of Hassan's trading house belongs to Sirokal. He is the head of the family, and the main character is sincerely surprised by this news. The guy puts his hand on the girl's belly and quietly says that his child will appear here soon. After these words, the main character quickly runs up to him, grabs him by the collar and indignantly asks how he dares to say such a thing. Seaton calmly looks at his brother. He asks his brother not to shout because he will scare Sirikal. The protagonist looks at the girl, then suddenly runs away, turning over his shoulder and shouting that they should do whatever they want with the house and the store. The girl asks him to stop and wait. Seaton asks the girl, displeased, what to do next. She explains that she can't let him leave the shop. Hassan's trading company needs his weapons. The young man reassures her. Don't worry, forging is no problem for him. The girl wants to add something. The protagonist stops in the open doorway and tells Seaton and Sirasiel that it is no longer his concern. He then closes the door behind him, and the pair watch in silence as he leaves. Seaton recalls how, as a child, he dreamed of becoming the heir to the store, being naughty and demanding attention. But his father always thought only of his brother Villa. The blacksmith was told that he was a true genius, given to the world once in 1,000 years. Will is a man with golden hands, blessed by the gods themselves. The man with the broken sword tells little Satan that they are alike. Both are ordinary people, no different from others. Seaton shouted at his father not to belittle him. How would he even know he had no talent? Now the boy remembers it, and realizes that he hated his brother, the one who had everything. His father's trust, his blessing, and a beautiful bride. That's why he took everything away from him, and now he smiles with disgust. The boy watches as there is a knock on the door. A charming girl enters the room with a bouquet of flowers. Someone else lingers behind her. The girl apologizes for the unexpected visit and asks where to find Mr. Gopoki. Suddenly, an Insurian call was heard, and everyone looked in surprise at the girl who had entered the room. They instantly bowed, for before them stood Princess Anna Rose, the 7th princess. The girl apologizes shyly and wonders if she pronounced Hapasai correctly, which is the name of the workshop. She has just learned that Mr. Will Craft has opened his own shop and has brought him a congratulatory bouquet. Seth doesn't understand why the princess would visit this particular forge and why she would mention Will's brother's name, so he asks her again about Hapasai. The princess approaches Kira on her heels and tells her that this is how it should be. The bride of the son of the head of the trading house, Hassan, Mr. Vila, looks up at the princess in surprise. The princess confesses to the girl that she is very jealous of her. Because she was lucky enough to marry such a beautiful man. Cyril looks up in surprise and asks which wonderful man she is talking about. Seaton turns to Princess Honoris and informs her that his brother's engagement to Cyril has been broken off, and that his brother has already left the shop. He is now its owner. The princess is silent, surprised and confused. She smiles and says that's exactly how it is. That means Mr. Vila is no longer with them. So she understood correctly that Hopsy is now in their care. Seaton assures her that both the store and the entire inheritance will go to him. He asks the princess not to worry. He will handle all the affairs himself, taking everything upon himself. The girl looks at him silently and slowly straightens her hair. She laughs loudly, mocking your loud statements that are completely beyond your capabilities. But a moment later, she apologizes, turns around and walks away, while the couples just look at each other in silence and surprise. She confidently walks past the armed guards, ordering them to immediately cease all dealings with Hassan's trading house. The guards do as the princess commands without hesitation. She smiles and says that this is an urgent task. Mr. Will must be found at all costs because he couldn't have gone far. One of the warriors asks, if the brother really inherited the heroic deeds of Hapsize, then why are they doing this now? The princess turns sharply to him and coldly asks, what do you even know about Hapsize? The main character stands on the shore and silently throws pebbles into the water. They easily bounce on the surface, leaving circles behind them. The main character decides for himself. Even if they return to ask for forgiveness, he will never set foot in the capital again. Taking the hammer in his hand, he loudly proclaims that the time has come to use the golden hand. The boy feels a connection with the divine hammer Mjolnir, and it begins to glow with an unearthly light in his hand. At that moment, he remembers asking his sick grandfather as a child what a gapsi was. Grandpa calmly explained to Will that these people were also blacksmiths, like himself, possessors of a golden hand. After that, Grandpa showed his hand on which a ring shone. Littleville was surprised and asked again. It turned out that the golden hand was endowed with a special skill in creating things. All the owners of the Happas in history have always had this golden hand. The main character threw some small object into the air, causing it to spin in flight. The guy swung his glowing hammer, activated his blacksmithing super ability, and powerfully struck the object right before it fell. This object has turned into a real ingot. The main character takes it in his hands and understands. If he sells this valuable thing, he can stop worrying about money. But he must be careful. Reckless actions can easily destroy the entire financial system. He squeezes the ingot tighter in his palm. The protagonist also remembers his grandfather telling him that the golden hand usually contains only one ability for each person. However, he possesses as many as 5 different item creation skills, something that has never happened before in the entire long history of Hapasize. He tells us that they, the Hapasai, have long since perfected their skills to create divine weapons. It is precisely such a weapon that he has forged, the hammer Mjolnir. Now he passes this hammer to him. From now on, he is the new Hapasai. The man looks closely at the hammer. Along with the title from his grandfather Gankoji Craft, he inherited the divine weapon. At the personal request of the king, he began to maintain the most important artifacts of the kingdom, the city barrier, the holy sword of the hero, and a number of other valuable items. He was engaged in this work constantly. The princess turns to her guards and says that the peace and tranquility in their country and throughout the world is due to Mr. Hapasai. The warrior expresses concern about the protective barrier during Mr. Hapasai's absence. The princess, looking up, assures him that it was recently repaired, so there's no need to worry for a whole year. The warrior then asks if he should tell the heroine Caroline about this. The princess notes that this is not necessary, but throws out a bouquet of flowers anyway, mentioning that they recently conducted a technical inspection of the heroine's sacred sword. Will replies that if you don't fight an entire army of ancient dragons, the blade will start to lose its sharpness very quickly. The girl turns around and orders everyone to find Mr. Will immediately. She orders to protect the barrier and ensure the safety of the entire city. Let everyone get down to business immediately. Everyone obediently follows the princess's order. The heroine Carolina trusts Mr. Will not as a master, but as a person. Now that he is free, she must quickly find him before dangerous insects appear. The protagonist swings his hammer with great force and hits it precisely in front of the black cubic box, skillfully using the hole in the box. First, he will save money for the trip there. This service is a business that his father started after the death of his grandfather, when the family did not have even a piece of bread left. That is, in fact, this is not the main role of Kapasai. Currently, he runs the Let section store, which continues this business. The main character smiled, remembering what his grandfather had said. The true purpose of a Hapased is not to serve at all, Grandfather had spoken of Mjolnir's divine hammer, which had become a model for all. Now it was time to let Willa fulfill her role as a Gapasai, following in that example. The grandfather gently places his hand on the boy's head, who is clutching the food to him in tears. He asks his grandson once again to fulfill the main purpose of the Kapsai, to bring gifts to heaven itself. After these words, his hand gently lowers, and the ring disappears from his finger. The main character is certain. It was his grandfather who showed him the way. The boy again throws something high up and swings his hammer. And then he hits that object right in the middle. It turns out to be a random motion crystal. A random movement crystal appears. It teleports the owner to completely unfamiliar places, where he has never been before. The protagonist quickly grabs the crystal and instantly activates its power. The main character closes his eyes and dreams. He will definitely become a cool master, like his grandfather Genkuji. He will go on a journey, polish his skills, and certainly discover new sources of inspiration. And he will definitely make an incredible, almost divine weapon. Just like this wonderful hammer next to it. Suddenly, a loud female scream is heard. The main character notices it immediately. Someone's hands reach out to him. It's a girl with ears and a tail running straight ahead, and behind her is a huge angry bear rushing, growling, and chasing them straight. The girl, covered in tears, begs someone to save her. The protagonist reacts in bewilderment, grips the hammer tighter, and prepares for action. The main character shouts at the giant bear, trying to stop it. He rushes straight at the beast and strikes it. At that moment, the girl flies up. She finds herself behind the boy. The boy stands with his eyes closed. Behind him, the girl falls to the ground. It's already dark. Right in front of the boy is the huge body of a headless bear, and the girl behind him is trembling with fear. The protagonist wonders if the force has become his new home. Looking around with a smile, he suddenly notices something that surprises him greatly. The boy looks at the girl. She is covered in scratches and bruises. Tears are streaming down her face, and her legs have been brutally cut off. He realizes that he is facing a wild girl. The main character looks at the beast man and worries if everything is okay with her. She, barely holding back tears, is holding onto her injured shoulder, and he immediately notices it. The young man realizes that these goods appear to belong to slave traders, but the girl hastily looks away from him. He assumes that the merchants themselves have probably already been eaten. The girl complains that she is in a lot of pain. He notes that she is injured. Suddenly, the girl starts screaming loudly, bursting into tears. The villain Shock orders her not to move. He holds the hammer almost at her and activates his golden hand. He brings the hammer very close to the girl. At first, she just hisses, but then she looks closely at the hammer and seems to notice something strange. The protagonist smiles at the girl and assures her that he will not harm her. Then he abruptly raises his hammer, connects his abilities, and activates the skill. Mjolnir begins to sparkle with incredible energy. Will hits the hammer precisely where the girl's leg was severed and applies a full healing. The girl closes her eyes in fear. The next moment she screams, but her leg begins to heal. Her leg instantly heals, as if there was no injury. The girl looks at this miracle in amazement. She gets up and, still not believing her eyes, asks Will, "What just happened?" The protagonist calmly tells how he activated his skill with a hammer, completely repaired all damage, and now shows her his tool. We will ask the girl to allow the boy to use another ability. She looks at him in surprise, and in a moment something unexpected happens. A bright light flashes on the girl's neck. The boy uses the removal skill, and the collar suddenly simply disappears without a trace. Smiling, the boy warns Beastman that if he takes off this collar incorrectly, he could lose his head. But now he is free. The girl calls out the name Burrow, and Will looks at her in surprise. The girl introduces herself to Burrow, sincerely hugs the guy and thanks him for saving her, calling him brother. The main character in response gives his name and suggests getting ready for the night, as it is already getting dark. Burrow watches in surprise as Will confidently walks towards the tree with a hammer in his hands, swings it in front of the trunk, and says that this is probably what is needed. The main character uses the skill of transforming a tree into a real wooden house. Swinging with force, he accurately hits the trunk while a mule grazes nearby. After the impact, the tree begins to creak eerily, and then completely changes its shape. Wall watches all this with a satisfied smile. Burrow is horrified. He looks at it and cannot contain his surprise. What is this? Has a tree just turned into a house? A wooden house appears on the tree, with a ladder leading to it. At the very beginning of the ladder, a lantern swings. The protagonist invites Burrow to go inside. At this moment, something unusual is happening on the border of the kingdom of Getanaga. Smoke is billowing everywhere. The knights see the bodies of dragons around them and quickly realize that before them lies not just a few creatures, but an entire army of ancient dragons, capable of defeating anyone. One of the night watchmen notices an icy mountain and on its peak a silhouetted figure. He is stunned by what he sees. A magical girl descends from the mountaintop with a sword in her hands. Everyone immediately recognizes her as the legendary heroine, the owner of the ice sacred sword, Lady Caroline Iceberg. One of the knights asked if she was alone. He noted that a barrier around the city alone was not enough to completely solve the problem. For true peace in the kingdom, the ice heroine was needed. The knights suggested that Lady Caroline return to the castle with them. The girl examines the sword with admiration, while one of the knights watches her in the middle of the wilderness. She reports that the blade has become completely dull. The knight understands her and says that even the holiest swords lose their sharpness over time. He reflects on the fact that the always reserved, cold Lady Caroline suddenly gave everyone a smile. The girl replies that that's why. She doesn't have time to finish, because she instantly disappears from sight. All the knights look at each other in shock, not believing that she just disappeared into thin air. Just among the bustling streets of the capital of the kingdom of Getanega, a girl suddenly appears out of nowhere. Her sword glows wonderfully, and a strange creature sits on her shoulders, happily stepping on her. The girl immediately notices, Caro is in a good mood today. She looks around and stares at the animal that has attached itself to her. It turns out to be a cat, gently running its tail along the girl's cheek and asking, "I guess you're happy that you'll soon see your beloved owner again?" A diamond mark shines on her forehead. The girl looks at the cat and says that now she will be able to see Mr. Will. The cat, with his eyes closed, confesses that he also loves Will very much. His service is truly impeccable. No Hapsai has ever treated the sacred sword with such caution. The cat angrily paws the girl over the head and explains that Will said the blade would stay sharp until you killed 100 ancient dragons. That's why she defeated an entire pack of dragons. That's why she fought so hard. The girl admits with a smile, yes, it's true. She holds the sword for Mr. Will. He is the reason she is here. She announces that they are already there and stops near the house. She has a mirror in her hand. The girl carefully looks at her reflection, and then asks the cat to also evaluate her appearance. The cat confirms, "Everything is great. You are a real beauty." Seaton opens the door. He was about to greet the guests when he suddenly recognizes who is in front of him. The girl's joyful smile instantly disappears. Her face frowns again, and the cat seems to have melted into thin air. Seaton realizes that it is Lady Caroline, and bows respectfully. The girl asks the guy where Mr. Will is. He replies that his brother is not here. Carolina goes inside and says that she will wait here then. The guy says that as of today his brother is fired, and he himself is now the owner of this store. Suddenly the girl turns around sharply, looks angrily at the boy. An ominous aura seems to emanate from her, and the boy, frightened, covers himself with his hand. The young man asks in horror if she is really so angry because of her brother, and the girl already guesses that this fool kicked Mr. Will out. The girl points her sword straight at the boy's face, the blade stopping inches from him. She asks where Mr. Will is, because she needs him to fix her sword. Then she wonders if the boy thinks she's crazy for not having anyone to repair the weapon. The boy leans slightly and tells Caroline that he will give her the frosty holy sword, the ice heroine, in place of her brother. But the girl immediately replies that he is incapable of such a thing. The cat, perched right on the girl's sword, believes that only Caroline Ville can see her. However, she suggests that perhaps her brother will see her too. The young man confidently declares that he will easily cope, because his brother's task is a trifle for him. The girl takes the sword blade away from him and asks if he understands what will happen if he fails. The boy confidently grabs the sword and asks her to trust him. The young man carries a sword with him and is sure that when Carolina learns about his abilities, she will definitely want to come back again. He thought about the fact that his brother was simply born early, and now he himself was going to take away everything that was important to him. The boy claims that he can do the same thing as his brother. He asks to watch him carefully, puts the sword in a certain place, and it suddenly begins to glow. Suddenly, the cat feels a sharp, unbearable pain. The guy exclaims that everything is actually simple, but the cat screams indignantly that it hurts terribly and asks to be more careful. Suddenly, the cat grows incredibly large, turning into a giant, and the sword magically hangs in its mouth. It screams at him, demanding that he stop. The boy steps back and stares in astonishment at the sword hanging in the air. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain in his hand. Granny reaches out her hand and the sword flies straight into her palm. She examines the weapon carefully and reports, "This sword is full of rage. The cat on the sword walks and tells Seaton that he does not hear the voice of the sword. He uses it only at his own discretion. Instead, Will learned to understand that everything has its own soul, and treated the weapon with respect and care. The guy smiles nervously and asks what kind of nonsense they're doing. Like, how can things come together? But the cat just sighs. It's useless. This guy really isn't capable of anything. Carolina confesses that this sacred sword has a will of its own. Mr. Will took care of the sword so that it would always show its best power. The girl turns around and angrily declares that she will never return here again. However, she turns around and admits to Seaton that both she and the sword truly appreciate his skills. After all, the difference between him and his brother Lordville is simply enormous. Cyril passes by the girl, looking at her in surprise, and Seaton calls out to her to wait. Cyril finally realizes that it is Lady Caroline in front of him, and the boy once again loudly asks her to stop. Suddenly, the boy falls to the floor and screams that he can't believe it. He's not going to give in to his brother. The girl watches in shock and asks what it all means. The boy admits that he angered the ice heroine. She said she wouldn't come here again. But even if one heroine passes them by, they already have a lot of visitors. Sariko looks at the boy angrily. She insults him in every way and says, if Lady Caroline hates them, it's the same as if the whole country is angry with them. All is lost for them. They start arguing, and the girl impatiently asks how they will deal with the deliveries now, ordering him to act faster. Suddenly, a guest arrives at their house and addresses the head of Sirikal, informing him that the royal family has ordered all trade operations to stop. The girl angrily shouts to the man that she is busy, and he should go away, but suddenly they both fall silent, realizing what he has just said. The house is lit. The little girl is warming herself in the bath and is happy about how warm it is. After tasting the dish, she is delighted. Such delicious food. She also notices that the clothes are very comfortable and the bed is surprisingly soft. She tells the protagonist that he is a real wizard, and the girl herself addresses him as her brother. The young man explains to her that he insulated this house using one of his abilities to create various things. He also made food from materials obtained through his special skill of supernatural forging. The girl, lying on the bed, happily says that it's just incredible and that he's really cool. He finally realizes that someone is really sincerely praising him, because lately Shirikai has only been saying that a craftsman should make much more things every day. For her, this is the absolute norm. The beast girl smiled happily and called the main character a god, and he looked at her calmly. The main character suddenly remembers his grandfather and realizes that he was a true genius who had no equal. During his lifetime, his grandfather created many impressive magical artifacts. Although the boy's father was inferior in skill to his grandfather, he was very diligent and always created something useful for others. The hero remembers his father and grandfather and realizes he learned his craft from both a true genius and a simple man. The main character confesses to the girl that he is not a god at all, but an ordinary blacksmith. All he wants is to give people joy with his creations. The boy silently looks at the girl, who is also lying peacefully. He asks if she is asleep yet. Her eyes are closed, so the boy decides that she is indeed very tired. There is a birdhouse hanging on a tree outside the window. As morning falls, the main character, lying in bed by the window, slowly opens his eyes. The protagonist stretches, yawns widely, and realizes that it is morning. Suddenly his gaze falls on something, and he freezes in surprise. He looks at the girl half-lying on his bed, in short shorts with fluffy ears and a tail. The guy wonders who she really is. The protagonist stares in bewilderment at the girl sleeping in bed and wonders who she is. He immediately notices her beauty. His attention is drawn to the girl's ears, and he begins to suspect something. Willix and Shock watch in surprise as the girl wakes up, stretches, rubs her sleepy eyes, and cheerfully greets Willa's brother good morning. The boy realized that the girl was definitely from Burrow and, stunned, asked her if she had grown up. The girl looked at herself in surprise and could not believe the changes in her own body. She touches herself with her hands in surprise, calls out her name and says that it seems the creature evolved overnight. Then they walk down the street together and the girl walks quickly, so he tells her that she is walking too fast. The girl looked at her clothes and told the boy that the things he had made for her were extremely comfortable. She thanked him sincerely for that. The protagonist asks with interest what this evolution of essence is, and the girl turns to him. She explains to Will that when a monster absorbs a lot of magic, it can evolve into a higher level being. Similarly, beastmen have a touch of monster blood running through their veins, so this principle applies to them as well. Burrow approaches the boy, takes his hand and smiles, telling him that there was a lot of magic in the dish he was cooking. The protagonist asks the girl to listen to him and asks if she is really going to go with him. She stops and asks the boy if he loves her. Will stops, stunned, and replies that he doesn't love her at all. Burrow then smiles and says that she's incredibly lucky because she has nowhere to go back to. Embarrassed, Burrow confesses to Will that she wants to be by his side and serve together. The protagonist notices that with evolution, not only her abilities have changed, but also her character and even her manner of speaking. After that, the girl leans over to the boy and whispers softly in his ear that he can now have children. The boy is shocked by this and runs away. Burrow, exclaiming that he has understood everything, runs away, and the girl runs after him, asking him to stop. Some time has passed. The main character enters the water and looks around in confusion. There should be a village here, so where did this water come from? Then the main character notices a road sign and draws attention to the strange, suspicious name of the village. They walk in this direction for a while, when suddenly they notice a lake ahead. Will is surprised and wonders where that village is. Burrow notices people in the distance, so he immediately rushes forward and joyfully exclaims that he will meet them right away. Someone nearby tells them that the village of Dedend is just below this lake, and Will and Burrow look around in surprise. They turn and see an old man with a stick who introduces himself. His name is Arthur. He is an elder. The main character asks the elder if something happened to them. Old Arthur approaches the people and tells them that there was a recent heavy rainstorm that flooded the village, and now they don't even have any young people left. Now they have no idea what to do next. Even if young people were around, it wouldn't change the situation. The main character is going somewhere, and Burrow notices it, looks after him, and asks where he's going. She doesn't hesitate and follows him. The boy climbed a rock and looks around from a height, and the girl asks him, "What happened?" The main character says that the village is surrounded by mountains on all sides. It's like a big bowl. That's why the water flooded the entire area. Looking at a piece of land, he realizes that something can be created here. So he picks up a hammer. Vil calls upon the power of the divine hammer of Moulinir and transforms into a gigantic form. Everyone, including Burrow, watches in fascination as the hammer flashes a blinding light and begins to grow rapidly. The girl is surprised by the guy. It's incredible. The main character is counting down the time until some action. The protagonist strikes with a hammer, which suddenly extends and becomes very long. Upon impact, the tool even bends from the force and length. Finally, a huge hammer falls to the ground with a thud. Everything around it shakes, and a powerful shockwave rolls on. People are barely standing, covered in dust and covering their faces with their hands. Burrow notices a huge crater, another one created by the blow of Will's hammer. Then the main character hits the ground with the hammer again and suggests they go together. Then he turns the hammer horizontally. He strikes the mountain with his hammer several times, and with the last shot, the rock begins to crumble into pieces. When a hole appeared in the mountain, water began to flow out of it. The main character observes this and says that it is even for the better. Everyone looks in the direction where all the water has flowed, and finally realizes the main character has created a real reservoir. The elder reports that the water is receding quickly, so it's time to return to the village. When they arrive, they find a terrible sight. The houses have been destroyed. The elder Arthur falls to his knees and finally realizes everything is destroyed, just as he feared. Will notices that wooden houses are very sensitive to water, and old ones even more so. Suddenly, a black cube appears above him. The conductor points the hammer straight ahead, and fragments immediately begin to fly out of the cube. People look at this in shock and ask the guy what he's doing, but he ignores them, activates his golden hand, and his hammer fills with energy. The protagonist uses full restoration, namely melting. He hits the ground with a hammer, and before everyone's eyes, the destroyed buildings begin to move and rebuild themselves. The houses have already been built from new materials. The main character reports that everything is fine now, and he has additionally strengthened the buildings. The people rejoice that their homes are finally restored. They cannot believe their eyes and ask if this is a dream. The elder examines the walls, notices that they are now stronger than before, and jokes that he has accidentally become a great wizard. The villagers bow to the main character and thank him profusely. Now the elderly villagers will be able to live in peace. One of the villagers jokes that for the owner of the golden hand, such a thing is like spitting on a piece of paper. The elder turns to them and says that they want to thank him. He asks if they need anything, without looking up from the ground. The main character, standing at the table by the fireplace, says that gratitude is worthless if they cannot repay their benefactor, in which case all the villagers will remain dissatisfied. Will listens to them, scratches the back of his head, and ponders what question to ask as a sign of gratitude. Suddenly the boy seems to remember something and asks if they have anything unusual, for example, weapons or some special tools. The villagers just look at him in surprise, completely not understanding what he's talking about. There is a sword hanging on the wall, secured with several magical seals. The protagonist enters this room and notices that it is some kind of cursed sword. He is amazed by such a find. The elder tells that once upon a time, a hero defeated the evil god with this very sword and saved their village. However, later he himself lost his mind and the ancestors locked this sword away in a shrine. The protagonist takes the sword in both hands, examines it carefully and notices that it is a truly terrifying weapon. The elder asks Will if he is sure, since they cannot even touch this sword, and shines a flashlight on it. Will asks Burrow to wait outside for him, but she refuses. She explains that if she stays outside, she won't be able to protect him if something happens. The protagonist agrees and decides to act without delay. He raises the hammer over the sword with a swing. The elder wants to say something, but the young man at the same moment lowers the hammer and uses the destructive power of the first level. The elder looks at this in shock and cannot believe his eyes. Meanwhile, the main character takes out a sword, the blade of which is cracked in places. The protagonist looks at the sword and says that he really had bad luck. Because of the blood that remained on the blade, it was sealed for a long time, and now it is all covered in rust. The elder turns to Willin and asks who he is talking to. The boy replies that if you imagine him as a sword, you can hear his voice. The main character notices that a strange, cursed energy is emanating from him, which attracts something mysterious to itself. The girl shouts to the boy to be careful, and the older Arthur asks her not to come any closer. The main character tensed up and warned, "This sword is cursed. One has only to touch it and the mind will immediately become clouded, because it is a weapon with a dark and tragic history." Suddenly, the energy of the chrysanthemums takes the form of a strange creature, and the main character asks in bewilderment, "Who are you?" Burrow asks in surprise who he is talking about, and the elder wonders if Will sees the spirit of the sword. The elder says, when he says that only the chosen ones are able to see the spirit of the sacred sword, the question arises, does this sword really have its own spirit? But sacred swords also have a drawback. These weapons should be available to everyone, not just the chosen ones. The main character says that the sword, which can only be wielded by one special person, is actually a real curse. It is completely shrouded in dark magic. Elder Arthur sternly orders the protagonist to immediately release this sword. Burrow is also worried about Will. This sword drives anyone who touches it mad. Its owner was first locked up and then thrown into this dungeon. The protagonist complains that he feels pain, and the creature in front of him asks the boy to break it to give it freedom. He will explain that he strives to make these tools a joy to use, and one that everyone will enjoy returning to again and again. But the boy won't let go of his hammer. This tool is his hope for salvation. The main character activates the Golden Hand skill and swings Mjolnir at the sword with a swing. Burrow, the old man, and the mysterious or cursed force itself are watching this closely. Soon everyone learns that he is a blacksmith. His name is Hapasai, and his job is to repair tools. The main character confidently declares that he will see the matter through to the end. Now his name is Night Sky. The guy skillfully swings his sword, easily and effortlessly. A creature created from cursed energy begins to disintegrate, and suddenly a powerful flash of light shoots from the building into the sky. The main character uses super melting and hits the sword with his hammer with all his strength. Both Burrow and the elder could barely stand on their feet from the furious shockwave. At this moment in the kingdom of Gathainig, a girl turns to Will, asking where he is. Suddenly, the cat is surprised, and the girl asks Ice what happened when the cat looks away. The girl on the cat turns in the direction where the beam of light is coming from, and immediately realizes a new sacred sword has been born. The main character reaches for a glowing sword. Mysterious symbols flash on the blade, and an ominous cursed energy swirls around the sword. The cursed creature above the sword suddenly transforms into a naked woman, but a moment later, clothes appear on her. The girl happily greets him and says she is happy to meet him for the first time. At first, she calls him a brilliant master, but immediately corrects herself and addresses him as her creator. The main character takes the sword in his hands and asks the girl if it has become more painful. She answers in the affirmative. It turns out that she is the spirit of the sword. It is the sacred sword of darkness named Yezor. The girl thanks him for finally receiving a name. The guy is sincerely surprised to hear about the holy sword. The girl tells him that she was reborn. From a cursed sword, she turned into a holy blade. She understands that he is the creator of this holy sword. Elder Arthur observes the girl in bewilderment and asks what it is. Burrow replies in delight that it is something incredible. Shaylee's Burrow tells the girl that she is incredibly beautiful, and she in turn wonders if anyone else sees her besides the one who created her. The main character throws the sword to the girl, and she, catching it with surprise, asks, "Can only a hero hold a holy sword?" Suddenly, the girl begins to swing her sword in the air. She holds it tightly in her hands and looks curiously to the side. The girl looks at the sword and admits that as soon as she picks it up, she immediately feels the need to wield it. The boy adds that this epiphany came to him thanks to Burrow this morning. Burrow is very surprised by what she heard, so she asks the hero again. He explains that the sword he uses has also changed and become stronger. The girl notes that such a phenomenon is a real rarity, because the evolution of weapons was previously considered incredible. Vil says that in the Far East there is a tradition of engraving the name of the master on the sword. That's what his grandfather told him. He himself left his signature thanks to the power of the Golden Hand. Sacred swords are weapons that the apostles of God brought to earth. Elder Arthur, with a lantern in his hand, tells Will in surprise that he cannot believe his eyes. After all, he is the first to have managed to forge this sacred blade. Will says that old Gan Koji once complained that he had never been able to forge a holy sword, so he was the first to do so. Burrow asks Will what happened next. He made a holy sword, a true divine weapon. Isn't that a reason to rejoice? The main character admits that this time he simply completed what someone else had left unfinished, so everything created was not his own creation from the very beginning. Willa is most happy that Yosora is finally happy. The girl looks at him intently. He says that one day he will create a divine weapon that he will be truly satisfied with, and he will do it from scratch. Carolina, with the cat on her shoulder, froze in amazement, looking at the flash in the distance, and couldn't believe their eyes. This simply couldn't be happening. The cat stares in surprise upon hearing that the holy weapon was forged by a man. Carolina asks if it's true, and the stranger suddenly starts laughing. The girl suddenly laughed out loud, and then Ice asked why she was laughing, asking if she understood anything. The cat looks at us in amazement at what we have done. The girl happily exclaims that it is true. Now the whole planet finally recognizes his power. But suddenly she has a flash of insight. She abruptly starts running. Realizing that the matter is serious, she asks Ice to find the new sacred sword where they just jumped, and the cat is completely scared. A carriage rushes through a forest clearing, in which the main character, immersed in reading, thinks aloud. The village of Dedend is located at the very edge of the kingdom, so it is quite possible that the path will then lead all the way to the Majuku Empire. He closes the newspaper and says that anywhere but the kingdom they came from. Burrow harnesses himself to the cart instead of the coachman, and jokes cheerfully with Will that he is very lucky to receive an entire cart as a gift. The main character looks out of the carriage and says that this is a sign of gratitude for his help in the village, so he simply could not refuse. The villagers happily wave him goodbye. The boy says that he was even entrusted with the sacred weapon of darkness. Burrow turns to Will and asks if she can really go with him. The protagonist assures her that it will be for the best. He asks her to take care of Yosora and use her with respect. One day, thanks to her, she will be able to make someone else happy. Yazoru, sitting on the roof of the carriage, exclaims that the air here is so fresh it takes your breath away. It's just incredible to be outside. The girl says that as a token of gratitude, she will teach Burrow the art of swordsmanship. Surprised, he asks if she can really become better. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blows everyone away, and they scream in surprise. Everyone wonders where such a fierce wind is coming from. Meanwhile, Burrow notices something above and immediately reports it to the others. Just from the sky to the ground, right in front of the cart, a horse suddenly stops abruptly, and a dragon with a displeased look looks intently straight at the group of people. The protagonist, confused, shouts to everyone that it's a green dragon. Suddenly, the monster rises into the sky and hovers right above them. Will looks up and says that it's attacking from the air. He happily reports that the scales of this green dragon are excellent for creating armor. Yuzora chewily notes that her creator sees monsters only as a source of materials to be extracted from them. The girl turns around and confidently says, "Leave it to me." She sets out to train Burrow. Unexpectedly for everyone, she is shocked in the very first fight. The protagonist assures that he will definitely test Yuzora's abilities at the same time. A girl named Nasai orders Burrow to go ahead, and she agrees, taking Persuward with her. The dragon roars menacingly and swiftly attacks them from above, and Yozuru orders Burrow to be on the alert, and she obediently agrees. Both girls fly up to the dragon, and just as it is about to release fire, Burrow closes her eyes tightly. The girl begins to slowly pull the sword out of its sheath, and the main character, watching this, is literally stunned with surprise. The girl, without even opening her eyes, swings her sword and accurately hits the dragon right in the throat. Eri winced in pain as a bleeding wound appeared on his neck. The girl happily yelled to Will that she had managed to strike but suddenly froze in place, as if she had lost her sense of reality. She notices that the wound is shallow, which is bad. Suddenly, the dragon starts to puff up for some reason. The girl holds the sword in front of her and confesses that she is very scared. She is ordered to look straight ahead, and she is surprised to see that it is Yosura in front of her. Yozora appears behind the girl and tells her that if she keeps her feelings in a case, the light of the soul sword will go out. She orders Burrow to open her eyes and learn to feel with her heart. The girl says that even in the deepest darkness of despair, you can always see a ray of hope. Meanwhile, Burrow stands guard, sword at the ready. The two end up in the dragon's belly. Burrow tells her that he sees him and is going to act immediately. Yozoru tells her to start and joins her. The dragon releases a powerful stream of flames, trying to engulf the girl, but she skillfully defends herself from his fiery attack. Burrow defeats the dragon with one powerful blow of his sword. The creature falls heavily to the ground, lifeless, and the girl lands confidently, clutching her weapon in her hands. The girl does not hide her surprise, and the main character approaches her and praises her. It was a wonderful job. Burrow tells him with a joyful smile that they succeeded. And Yosori easily notes, what they saw is not even 1% of her true strength. She turns away and tells her that even such a small thing won't be able to win on the first try. Burrow confirms that, even with Yosora's reinforcements, she is still a complete novice when it comes to swordplay. The protagonist gently strokes her head and notes that for the first time, the result was quite good. Will turns to Yosora with a smile and asks if that's true. She nods in response, and Burrow watches them happily. Ice calms his mistress, saying that there is no need to rush. They walk together through the forest, and Carolina shares the news. The Holy Sword is capable of wiping out an entire kingdom. If Will can create such swords, what will happen when other states find out about it? Ice reports that a war is about to break out for the right to own Will. The girl notes that this is not the most important thing. The main thing is until the world finds out that Will has a sacred sword. The girl, a little embarrassed, admits that she will be the first to propose to Will, and the cat calmly settles on his shoulder. The cat, confused, asks why it all comes down to this again. The girl explains that once he finds out that Vile is a celestial master who can forge holy swords, all the girls will start fighting for his attention. The girl shouts that she will not allow this, and asks Iceberg where they are now. The cat replies, "The holy sword is on the edge of the kingdom, near the village of Deaf Corner, right on the border with the Empire." Suddenly, the girl stops and asks about the Magic Empire, wondering who the hero of this empire is. Everyone present encourages Burrow to try. There is a commotion all around. Suddenly, lightning splits the sky, and Burrow, looking around in confusion, asks what to do next. Suddenly, a huge bolt of lightning strikes directly above their heads, and they involuntarily hide behind their hands. The protagonist wonders in confusion whether he himself caused it. Suddenly, a girl appears with an eye patch and a gun in her hands and declares that she has finally found her teacher. The girl with the whip smiles and says that she hasn't seen them in a while. Then she turns to the teacher, and Burrow asks him who she really is. The girl suddenly appears next to Burrow and prepares to attack, stating that now everyone will see if she is able to protect the teacher. The girl with one eyebrow says she'll check on her now. Burrow tries to turn around, but the main character asks him to wait. However, unexpectedly, Burrow manages to repel the girl's swift attack, leaving the protagonist confused behind. Burrow asks his rival in surprise what it is. Is it a whip? And she only smiles mysteriously in response. She confesses that her partner is the legendary Thunder Sword. Sanders often cannot believe that it is also a holy sword, and his surprise knows no bounds. Carolina and I get up, and the cat reports that it looks like the terrible hero contacted the city first. She tells us that one sacred sword is hidden on each of the 6 continents, and each of these swords belongs to an incredibly beautiful girl. Carolina is sure that the hero of the thunder is Reika Sandersoff, and as soon as this girl risks getting to Pesterville, she will kill her. Ice urges the girl, ordering her to run faster. Borov skillfully dodges the girl's next attack, and Reika tells him that her main trick is a super powerful grip. Burrow addresses her as a heroine, demanding that she receive just retribution, and thrusts her weapon away with his sword. However, her weapon is barely damaged, and Burrow is only amazed at its incredible strength. Reika wonders if it is by chance a sacred sword, but even he cannot cut through this whip. Reika admits that she does not support child abuse, but still decides to attack her again. Burrow flies back and Reika attacks, releasing a powerful charge of electricity. Reika orders Burrow to disappear. Suddenly, Burrow realizes how dangerous this is. However, the girl uses air alchemy right in the air and creates an air wall in front of her, thus repelling the enemy's attack. The protagonist stands with a hammer in his hands, and Yozoru notes in amazement that this lightning strike leveled an entire mountain. Simply incredible. The protagonist picks Burrow up in his arms. She looks him in the eyes and quietly apologizes. He asks her not to worry. The enemy is too powerful. Then Reika appears before them. Reika stands with a gloomy expression on his face and reports that the woman is too weak. Like the teacher's wife, she doesn't tell anything about herself. The guy asks about his wife in surprise. Reika turns to the teacher and reminds him. Does he remember how he promised to become her husband if she wins? Burrow reacts in surprise and abruptly turns to the main character, who is clearly nervous. He asks if she is joking about this again, but the girl assures him that everything is completely serious, and that she is not joking. The girl swung her whip in the air and shouted that she would certainly conquer him today. The clouds thickened in the sky and the first lightning struck. Yuzuru looks up at the sky and wonders, what are those eerie storm clouds gathering there? She notices that she was far from using all her strength in the fight. The girl continues to twirl the whip and tells the teacher that she is about to begin. This is her new super attack. The girl turns the whip in the other direction and orders the dragon to move forward. Suddenly, a formidable thunder dragon appears in the sky. The dragon roars furiously at the group of people, and Burrow freezes in shock. Yuzuru warns that if she strikes, everything around will turn into a scorched desert. The protagonist realizes that it is time to remove the restrictions from his hammer. Then the main character quickly untwists the hammer and throws it with all his strength straight at the dragon. The weapon flies without obstacles and hits the monster's mouth. As Mjolnir flies through the dragon, the protagonist uses his power to the fullest, using the highest level of the destruction of all skill. Mjolnir abruptly changes direction and races straight towards Will, who reaches out, preparing to grab the hammer. He caught the hammer and looked ahead with confidence. The girl had said it was so easy for him to break the hero's attack. She couldn't contain her admiration. He was truly incredible. Burr returns to Ville, who tells him who the woman is. Ville reveals that it is Reika, a thunderbolt hero who serves the Empire. The girl says that she also owns the eye, which is cursed by a spell. Burrow asks about it again. The main character tells the story of a terrible tragedy that befell her as a child. Her right eye is known as the cursed eye of death. Everything living that falls into its field of vision is doomed to death. This eye is a cursed artifact. No matter how much it is healed, it still returns to the way it was before. That is why it was locked in an underground prison. Even though she possessed the holy sword, the Empire could not accept the curse in her eye. They searched for someone who could remove this affliction, and finally turned to me. However, he could neither destroy the eye, nor even pluck it out. All that remained for him was to create a magical artifact capable of completely containing the power of her eye. Because of this, his gaze was considered deadly, and I was locked up in a dark underground prison for a long time. But the teacher saved her. He became a real savior for her. The girl says that's why she wants to be close to the teacher, but she doesn't want to remain an ordinary girl who is simply protected. She dreamed of becoming so strong that she could effortlessly surpass her teacher. But today, having learned about his creation of the sacred sword, she realized that this achievement was something only he could achieve. At this thought, she immediately hurried here. The guy did not hide his surprise. The protagonist slowly approaches the girl, and she, surprised by this action, watches him in confusion. At this moment, Ville turns to Reika with a request to remove the seal from her eye. She asks what he means. Burrow shouts at the boy that he is doomed to die. Yuzuru wonders what his creator is going to do next. The protagonist, with a confident look, asks if she is ready to trust him with her life, and the girl freezes in front of him, stunned by the unexpected question. Suddenly, this realization dawns on her, and she confidently declares that she is giving him her life by the will of God. She presses her thumb to her forehead and it begins to shake. The protagonist happily says that it's great and we can begin. He carefully begins to remove the bandage from her and takes it off completely. Will finds a glitch in the cursed artifact and suddenly rushes into battle, wielding a power that destroys everything in its path. He uses super powerful alchemy and hits the circles that have appeared above the girl's face with a hammer. They stand opposite each other. Suddenly, a mysterious symbol appears in her eye, and the girl looks at her teacher with surprise and confusion. Reika continues to stand in front of him, then covers her face with her hands and asks uncertainly if he is alive. The guy replies that he is fine, asks her not to worry, and this surprises the girl even more. The girl says that her eye has completely healed. Burrow notices that her eyes are now shining. Yuzuru wonders if the shrine was made from the cursed eye. The protagonist confirms. This is true. Originally, the night darkness was also a cursed demon sword, and because Reika's right eye is a cursed artifact, he was able to turn it into a shrine and make it the dark holy sword. To get rid of this curse, what is important is not the artifact itself, but how the curse itself is constructed. Reika is genuinely surprised to hear this. The young man took the cursed artifact apart, then put it back together, not creating it from scratch, but rather restoring it to its former form. Suddenly, a girl jumps forward and insists on giving her a second super attack. The protagonist, in complete shock, asks if there really is another such attack. Then there are blows. They engage in a fight. The girl finds herself on top of the guy, and he complains that she is pressing too hard on him and it hurts. The girl, in tears, is surprised that he really lifted the curse and sincerely thanks him for it. The protagonist confidently replies that she has become stronger too. The girl happily says that he recognized her, and that's why she's happy. So let him take her as his wife. However, the boy refuses. It is night. In the kingdom of Gaitanaga, a man stands in a room before a table. He picks up an object, places it against the sword, and leaves a glowing imprint on the surface. In an instant, the entire weapon flashes with a bright light. A sinister smile appears on his face, and he announces, "Just click here, and the truth can be hidden forever." After that, he turns around and thanks someone, because it really will come in handy. However, the man in the hood just waves it away, saying that there is no need to thank him. The hooded man asks Seaton to skillfully use this, while he himself activates the seal of disguise. A girl named Lixar Lipson asks her teacher if he will marry her if she wins. Is this true? She says that with this new right eye she can now do whatever she wants. She commands the Eye of the Time King to stop time for the teacher. With her arms spread out to the sides, the girl assumes a majestic pose. Meanwhile, the girl flies past the boy, who dodged, and suddenly finds herself right above Burrow. He is so stunned that he can't even move. The stunned girl asks the teacher why it didn't affect him, even though it did affect the girl. The teacher replies with a faint smile. The reason is that the artifact, the Eye of the Time King, was created by him. The guy says that God doesn't want people to kill each other with the help of his creation, so he provided a special safety feature in it. Burrow tells the man that he is like a god. Reika understands well that this is just a deception, and there is nothing fair about it. They set off for the Manuka Empire in a carriage. Reika confesses to Vile that he never agreed to become her husband, but she is obliged to report to the Emperor that he cured her eye. The boy is interested in what the Emperor is like. Burrow only cryptically advises him to see for himself. They were now in the capital of the Carter Empire. No matter how much Will looked around, the luxury of this country always amazed him. The main character looks at her in surprise and asks what this shining dome-shaped thing is. The brother asks where exactly it is. The guy replies, "Over there. If you see, this dome envelops the entire city." Yuzuru explained to the boy that what he saw was a barrier protecting the city. Ordinary people couldn't see it. Apparently his skill had increased significantly. The guy says that he has previously installed devices to create barriers, but this is the first time he has seen a real barrier in his life. They find themselves within the walls of the Imperial Castle. The three of them slowly approach the man, who is flanked by two servants. Reika informed the Emperor of her return. The woman, upon hearing this, asked if it was really Reika. Burrow is surprised to learn that the Empire is led by a woman, and Reika replies, "Yes, they are ruled by the strongest, regardless of gender." Empress Artemis led her troops in a time of unprecedented disaster, and personally led them into battle, saving her country. She became the first female emperor in history. The woman remarks that she and Will haven't seen each other in a long time. Will, in response, addresses Artemis with a similar phrase. The girl looks surprised. How do they know this? Reika reports that it was Her Majesty who asked the teacher to help with her eye. The Emperor thanks them for saving Reika from the curse for the second time, and apologizes for his coughing fit. Burrow anxiously asks Artemis if she feels unwell, and Reika adds that her lungs are seriously damaged. The cough has become unbearably strong, and even the most modern medicine is unable to cure them. She says she has very little time left. With trembling hands, she hands the servants a handkerchief with blood on it. The guy denies it, saying it's not true, and she will definitely recover. Artemis sadly denies it. The doctor said her body was destroyed. There was very little time left. The guy asks about it again, not believing what he heard. The girl says she's glad to be able to thank him properly before her death, and the guy reacts with surprise to her words. The main character says that he has one request for her, and she orders him to speak up. After all, he saved the hero and is now a real savior for them. The guy offers Artemis to let him heal her mutilated body, and this offer shocks her. She said that the doctors had already lost all hope. Even the Holy Virgin could not heal her, and besides, he was only a blacksmith. Things and people are not the same. The guy admitted that his skills were only enough to heal wounds and repair damage, but he did not know how to treat diseases. She added that her body was already destroyed. He says he will not cure the disease. Instead, he will restore to the body what it has lost through illness. Reika tells the Emperor that Vil is truly like a god, so he should be given a chance, and she agrees. He healed Reika, so the protagonist trusts him. Now the protagonist activates the golden hand. The hero has fully recovered and confidently demonstrates his strength. You will immediately notice the bright glow. The girls notice an incredible glow. The colonel runs into the room and reports an emergency. Pirnel Akiak reports that the Emperor is currently receiving medical attention. He also mentions strange events. The protective barrier device suddenly malfunctioned, and magical insects began to approach the capital. Reika thinks this is all complete nonsense. A group of heroes stands on a high balcony and carefully watches what is happening below. Magical insects are scurrying around and everything around is engulfed in chaotic events. There are many magical insects circling around. The city's residents hurriedly leave their homes and head for the imperial castle. Reika regretfully notes that they didn't make it on time. Akuyak reports that magical insects have infiltrated the damaged barrier. Raka immediately orders the defenses to be repaired. The core also emphasizes that it is necessary to find a craftsman who can repair the barrier device, because there is still no such specialist. The hero confidently declares that he is able to restore the barrier in just an instant. Kujak doesn't understand at all what Vale is talking about. Suddenly, the hero awakens the power of the Golden Hand. The hero realizes the seriousness of the events and notices that there is a magic circle in front of them. Vil boldly uses his abilities to repel his opponents. Suddenly, swarms of magical insects flock from everywhere. The hero uses the restoration technique. The group of heroes watches Will's skill with admiration. Will says that this light is too bright for insects. Kuyak suddenly notices that all the magical insects have disappeared somewhere. The core explains that from now on it will operate independently, without additional equipment, and that now any creature that touches it will be instantly destroyed. The colonel explains that humans are unable to see the barrier, as it is completely invisible. Will adds that the barrier device itself will not collapse in a short time. It can only be destroyed on purpose. The hero notices that the colonel is covered in sweat, and asks in surprise why this is happening to him. He then suggests that the hammer must have damaged the device. The young man says it's mean. A woman appears in a crown. Will notices the crown on the woman's head and begins to wonder who she might be. The woman in the crown introduced herself as Artemis, and wondered if the hero would recognize her. The characters are genuinely surprised when they learn who she really is. The heroes look at Artemis in surprise and ask what happened. She replies that Will healed her mutilated body. Will adds that he not only healed the damaged cells, but also restored those that were old. The people on the balcony greet Artemis, calling her a miracle of God and shouting words of congratulations. Artemis orders the arrest of Colonel Akuyak. In response, the colonel coldly declares that he will take everyone present with him. Colonel Akuyak shows off 7 lucky dust particles. Will doesn't understand what the colonel is up to. The girl asks the man to stop. Suddenly, Artemis throws the grain into the sky, and it finds itself high in the air. Artemis firmly declares she will never forgive those who harm the people of the Empire. Suddenly, a powerful explosion is heard. The heroes joyfully thank Artemis, addressing her, "Your Majesty." The young man thanks Artemis for her help, adding that the best reward for him is her charming smile. Artemis looks surprised. Reika addresses Artemis, respectfully calling her "Your Majesty," and proposes a temporary alliance. He will ask in surprise what these 7 lucky signs are. The heroes find themselves in the royal capital, where the Hassan trading house is located. The girl is upset. Both the royal family and the nobility no longer place orders with them. The chairman of the board excitedly says that if they lose another big client, the situation will become truly critical. She also says she is busy right now and asks to wait a bit. The guildmaster approaches the girl. Sarakar asks in surprise what made the S-class guildmaster come here in person. The guildmaster sincerely thanks them for the luxurious sword they recently managed to obtain. Saritsar recalls that this sword was forged by Villa, and the woman adds that they recently received 50 more Class A swords. The girl wonders how sharp these swords are, and another character smiles and replies that the swords look just great, but their quality does not live up to expectations. Sirakar notices several damaged swords in front of him. The guildmaster reports that the Class A sword they recently purchased turned out to be a fake. She explains that this situation occurred because one of her important subordinates could have been seriously injured. She also states that she is going to sue Hassan's trading house for fraud over this incident. The girl with glasses assures her over and over again that this will never happen again, adding, "If they are found guilty, it will all be over for them." Gilmeister says the trading house has fallen into too much disrepair. The woman turns around and says they will see each other in court. Seaton notes that they were very easy to fool. He admits that the curse of counterfeiting works flawlessly. He explains that he himself bought cheap swords, put the necessary brand on them, and slightly changed their appearance, so that later they could be sold at many times higher prices. When the sword breaks, Sirakar asks his brother what it could mean. "I see your machine is interested in the sword and wants to learn more about it." She understood that the sword he had forged was a fake. The heroine reported that the S-rank Adventurers Guild had filed a complaint due to Sandens's actions. He notes that the company is already making a profit even at the sales stage, and adds that now the most important thing for them is the quantity of goods sold, not their quality. Sarikar is outraged that for some people sales are more important than quality. He says that such words are unworthy of a true master and demands an explanation. She also emphasizes, if you lower quality, customers will go to competitors. The girl wonders if he could be a better mentor than Will. Sarikar demands that the young man forge an A-level sword. The boy asks for some time to prepare. She says he can't do it and calls such an attempt stupid and pointless. Sarikar admits that she has finally figured it all out and reveals the truth. It was Ville who supported Hassan's trading company. She explains that Ville made really high-quality goods. That's why his swords were always in demand. Session begins to get annoyed by Will's behavior. The young man adds that he is also capable of this. He claims that one only needs to use the cursed artifact and the weapon will instantly turn into a shrine. Sarikar mocks him, calls him a fool, and says that there are no such conveniences in life. She mentions Will. The girl admits that she was just as foolish. What a naive request it was to ask him to wait. Sarikar hit the young man right in the face. The girl compares him to Will and notes that he was much better. Takeshi drops to his knees and angrily slams his fist on the floor. He suddenly realizes that Will is superior to him in everything. The man angrily expresses his dissatisfaction. Polo points to the spot and turns to Will. We are talking about the lands that the Empire inherited from Queen Artemis. Ville notes that gratitude is irrelevant here. Artemis insists. Ville, who saved the Empire 3 times, deserves gratitude. Polo suggests naming the place Will Craft Derriere, but Will remarks that the name is too long. The young man is glad that there are intelligent people nearby, and assumes that people will soon be sent here to help govern this territory. Artemis adds that she will still need a workshop. The girl asks Will about the village. The young man suddenly notices that the village is completely empty. Not a single living soul around. The girl feels a sharp pain as she falls to the ground. A huge monster will attack the girl. She says Eric isn't here. Will pulled out his hammer to protect the girl. The young man does not stop and strikes again, swinging the hammer with a swing. The heroine confidently declares, she never forgives those who hurt girls. The girl screams in despair for him to stop the attack. She begs him not to kill her grandfather. The heroine says that the boy's name is Willacraft D. Rowley. Another girl curiously asks if he is the new gentleman. A group of people happily appeal to the new lord to help the village. The girl with the fluffy ears wonders what they mean when they talk about heroes. The girl's name is Noah. Noah points to the lizard. It turns out to be the grandfather and village headman, Sebast. Will asks in surprise why he became a lizard. The girl turns her back and shows the lizard scales on her skin. Noah explains that this is a curse from the white dragon god, who resides in the white dragon's spine. She tells us that this is an ancient deity who commands the winds, and under the influence of this wind, a person can be cursed and turn into a dragon. She also warns that if the curse becomes stronger, a person will eventually become a lizard. Will says with interest that he wants to try it. Suddenly, he notices a magic circle. The young man works energetically. I activate this power and call it the Golden Hand. The young man declares that he will destroy everything to create a new world. Meanwhile, the lizard gradually transforms into a human. Noah is happy to see his gray-haired grandfather. The old man gratefully says that he has become human again. The girl explains that it was the new lord who restored his human form. Polo asks everyone to line up for treatment. People gather together and take turns coming forward to receive help. The resident is surprised to see that everyone has returned to their normal appearance. Will confirms that everything is complete. The girl asks the new ruler where he is going. He replies, next in line is the White Dragon. He probably means the 7 lucky motes. The heroes found themselves among the snow-capped mountains known as the White Dragon's Ridge. Polo feels a thick, poisonous atmosphere around him. She says that if it weren't for the protective barrier that Mr. Will created, they would be in the same miserable situation. Will is surprised to note that the source of the curse doesn't seem to be here at all. The heroes also notice that the white dragon has disappeared, with no trace of it left. Polo grabs something by her legs and she immediately falls. She asks what it is. The hero notices a huge creature and immediately calls it a white dragon. Polo claims that the dragon is actually black, not white. The dragon demonstrates its power by releasing a stream of fire from its mouth. The young man decisively takes action. He desperately defends himself and boldly launches a counterattack against the dragon. We will take advantage of this extraordinary alchemy. The dragon opens its mouth preparing to attack and its gaze burns with aggression. The young man confirms that it is an improved version of the capital barrier. Polo draws attention to the sacred protective barrier. He also says that this barrier now protects not only from the dragon's poisonous breath, but also repels physical attacks, so he improved it. The heroes notice something strange. Let's check if there is some free space under them. He asks her if she's feeling okay after what happened. Polo thanks the protective barrier that saved them both. It is worth noting that this dragon cannot fly, as if it is bound by some terrible disease. He wonders, is it possible that dragons are cursed? The young man agreed with the conclusion he had reached in his thoughts. The girls call out to Mr. Will in alarm, while he boldly walks straight towards the huge dragon. Polo suggests that the dragon was angry because they stepped on its tail, but will vehemently deny this. He explains to his surprised companion that this creature is not angry at all. It is actually crying. Will addresses the dragon, asks him to remain calm, and promises that he will soon ease his suffering. The dragon bows its head in submission before him. The young man smiles and, raising his hammer, confidently declares that he will do it. Vil loudly shouts the words of his ability, first destruction and then rebirth. The dragon is enveloped in a bright glow and, roaring deafeningly, begins to change its form. The transformed dragon asks if its scales are normal. Will wonders if such powerful monsters can really talk. The dragon calmly explains that he can speak because he is a Mason. Polo is stunned and questions whether Mason is really a god who has come to Earth. He sincerely thanks the heroes for saving him. Jesus smiles and says he is just a traveling blacksmith. The dragon solemnly pronounces the boy's full name, adding that it matches his own, and the hero freezes in shock. He introduces himself as Lorie and says that he received this land from the previous king. Will understand why they have the same last name and quickly apologize for intruding on his territory. But Lorie will just sigh and say that the kingdom is long gone. The young man wonders why the dragon was cursed. Lorie recalls the past and confesses that ever since the day the king died, his heart has been filled with sadness. The dragon said that he was in a lonely retreat and did not notice how the poisonous curse was placed on him. Polo says that the dragon's wind has poisoned the locals. Lorie realizes with horror that he himself has brought trouble upon his former subjects. Will calms the dragon, explaining that it is not to blame for anything, and asks it to look around. The heroes find themselves in the middle of an endless scorched earth, surrounded by thick darkness. There's a cloaking technique at work here, so Will explain it and ask Lorie if he can see it. He explains that it's not just a barrier, but a special technique. It amplifies the negative energy and simultaneously restrains Mason. The young man confidently declares that only someone named Shichi Fukujin could have cast the curse. Hearing this name, the dragon became angry, because he remembered. It was Shichi Fukujin who destroyed his home. The dragon doesn't react at all, and Polo notices it immediately. Will says that restoring the house is better left to a blacksmith, and demonstrates his ability to take things apart and put them back together. A majestic castle rises from the ruins. Polo is delighted and notices that the protective barrier has disappeared. Will sighs with relief, now free to come and go, but suddenly notices something strange. Suddenly, the dragon Lorie turns into a magical girl with horns, calling out her name in surprise. She is stunned when she realizes that the castle that Vil built has now become sacred ground. Lorie explains, "The gods left on Earth lose their power. But in the world of the gods, Imeisen can unleash her full power and even take on human form." She comes to the conclusion that the castle that Mr. Will built has become a true sacred place. Will is stunned. He can't believe that he was the one who managed to create a divine territory. Lorie notices a strange mark on his hand and immediately recognizes it as a sun disk symbol. It turned out to be the Golden Hand, an extremely rare blessing that means its owner has the hand of the sun. Lorie says that you can count such owners on the fingers of one hand throughout history. Polo admires Lowry's depth of knowledge. The girl remembers that there was exactly the same sign in her possessions. Well, just can't believe it. She asks him to look at the floor, and indeed a large round emblem is clearly visible there. Will confirms with surprise that this symbol is completely identical. Lorie recalls that the king greatly valued this place, although she herself never understood what the inscription meant. Although Lorie doesn't notice anything suspicious, we assume there's some hidden mechanism here. He places his hand on the symbol, and it immediately begins to glow. The girls call out to him excitedly, but he doesn't hear their voices at first. Will realizes with horror that the device has responded to his signal, and the bright light begins to inexorably pull him towards it. Will looks at his own hands in surprise, as if he's feeling something new in them for the first time. He realizes that he is in a completely different place. Majestic columns tower around him. Looking around, he tries in a daze to understand what this strange place is in front of him. Larry's voice sounded concerned. "How are you? Are you okay?" Will suddenly realizes he hears a voice in his head. Lorie explains that it's telepathy, the ability of the Mason to communicate through thoughts. She adds that this ability allows one to share all 5 senses. Lorie remarks that it seems like something has swallowed up the entire land, and now they are in a place that resembles a city. At first, Will was stunned, but then he agreed with her, realizing that everything was exactly as it was. An invisible obstacle suddenly appears in his path. It feels like a transparent wall. One day we will look up and see the morning sky, but the sun will not be there. And then we will wonder, what kind of strange thing is this? Lorie says that everything around him, the sky and the forest, seems real, but in reality it's just a skillfully created illusion. By comparing the facts, you can understand, both the sign at the entrance and the artificial city are the Hapo Psi workshop. He remembers the old man's words about no one being allowed into the workshop, and now he understands. It's all because of a guard like Lorie. Lorie complains that he feels like a frozen guard statue here. He notices that in some places the space seems to change, and so he touches one of the symbols on the floor. He had barely touched the sign when a powerful energy vortex swirled around him. The vortex spins and turns into a bright tunnel, which he calls a corridor. Lorie, in despair, shouts to Will that he is here, and it is an extremely rare dungeon called Sim Yam. Will, completely confused, repeats unfamiliar words. Sevens and falling. Lorie says there are 7 such dungeons around the world, but only one has been discovered so far. Will was the first person to venture inside. Will touches the wall of the dungeon and immediately notices. The local mineral is not at all like Camusian stone. The young man is delighted because he will be able to forge a new weapon from this mysterious mineral. Lorie remembers reading in a book that the walls of this dungeon were absolutely impossible to destroy. However, Will, with a light attack of his hammer, breaks part of the wall. Lorie is shocked, recognizing this as a divine move. Will asks in surprise if this is really true. Lorie screams in despair, warning that this extremely dangerous technique could wipe out all life from the face of the earth. The young man calmly uses another ability. He turns the fragments of the wall into a real furnace, which surprises Lorie even more. We'll tell you what the special feature of the golden hand is. Lorie is delighted because usually such hands only have one ability, but Will calmly revealed that he had 5 skills. Among them were super fast processing, destruction, and full recovery. He admitted that he didn't like his 5th skill because it could only be used once, so he decided to explore its possibilities first. Lorie is surprised to realize that he managed to do everything in time. Thanks to his super fast processing speed, he instantly creates a detailed map of the dungeon. He smiles and shows her a detailed map of the entire maze. She can't understand how he did it. Lorie is amazed by his superhuman abilities. He says that his wall punch sent waves across the ground like sonar, scanning everything around him. Will modestly replies that he is not a god at all, but an ordinary traveling blacksmith who knows how to skillfully create various things. He returns to his girlfriend, and the happy Polo throws herself on his neck with a joyful exclamation. She hugs him tightly. With tears in her eyes, she confesses how much she worried about him. Lorie explains that although only an hour has passed for them, 10 days have already passed on the surface, because time flows differently in the dungeon. To apologize for the trouble he caused, he decides to give her a small gift and sincerely ask for forgiveness. Suddenly, Polo hears Veil's voice in her head. She realizes with surprise that she can now talk to him anytime, anywhere. The girl, with tears of joy in her eyes, thanks him for such a wonderful gift, and Lorie confirms this is real telepathy. Will reveals that he and Lorie have crafted a special hair ornament out of minerals that allows them to communicate thoughts. She quickly figures out that the thing is actually an indestructible artifact. Lorie still can't believe what happened, and Will says he has one more request for her. The events are transferred to the village of Lurismon. Noah asks the old man to rest for a while, but the old man, despite his severe cough, refuses. He wants to develop the village as quickly as possible. She says it's the Lord's doing, but suddenly a huge winged figure appears in the sky. A magnificent white dragon soars among the clouds, striking in its enormous size. Horror and panic grip the village when people spot the dragon. The residents are initially horrified to see the dragon before them, but quickly recognize it as their divine patron, Lorie. No one ever understood why the dragon god was cursed. Panic spread throughout the village as everyone fled in fear. Lorie wants to leave so as not to scare the villagers. We will ask the dragon to wait a while. Follow solemnly announces to all the villagers that the curse on the dragon god has been lifted. Will confirms that it will not spread any further. We will tell you that the dragon was also under the curse, and now he wants to apologize for all the inconvenience caused. He turns to the dragon and asks if it really wants to apologize to the villagers. Will asks the dragon to give him some materials, and without waiting for an answer, carefully removes one scale from its body. He throws lures and scales high up. The ox places the scales on the fountain, and it begins to shine with all the colors of the rainbow, captivating the imagination of the locals. The water from this fountain heals people. They are filled with strength and cannot believe in such a miracle. We will tell you that Mason scales have healing properties, and from now on the fountain will bestow these amazing healing powers forever. He joyfully announces that from now on, the healing power of the white dragon god is able to heal any disease or wound. The villagers thank the dragon god and accept his apology, which he expressed in this way. The dragon Lorie looked at Will gratefully and whispered softly, "Thank you." Suddenly, a strange postal owl, which he has never seen here before, sits on Will's shoulder. The owl spreads its wings and hands him a letter, which clearly says, "To Mr. Willow." The letter talks about an urgent call. The hero of water has been wounded in battle, and his sacred ice sword has been shattered. 4 hours ago, in the heart of the capital of Carter, a brave warrior repelled an attack by guardsmen who tried to force her to retreat immediately. The girl screams desperately, begging the guards not to interfere with her because she needs to get to Mr. Will. The cat notices that this time their enemy is much more powerful than all the previous ones. A giant monster loomed over the fallen heroine. She realized it was time to use her last trump card. She unleashes her powerful attack, Double Moon Shard. The cat explains the essence of this technique: destruction by the crescent moon and detention by the cold of the full moon. Whoever receives this blow, despite all the wounds inflicted, the monster instantly regenerates its body. Carol is seriously injured. Keith runs to her anxiously and asks if she's okay. The cat thanked her and admitted that he was happy to become her sword. The girl screams in despair, begging him to stop immediately. At that moment, the companion sword itself rushes at the enemy. The sword uses its final move, Absolute Zero. The girl runs into the hospital room. She reaches forward with a trembling hand, desperately calling out Ice's name. We will reassure Carolina, tell her that everything will be fine now and that she needs to rest. Caroline notices Mr. Will and calls him by name. He sadly repeats the name of her sword in response. We will tell you that for Caroline, the holy sword Iceberg was like a family. Polo wonders if the sword can be restored. Will wonders why Hoppo was entrusted with its care. Explain that the holy sword, like a person, cannot be restored. It requires constant care and proper maintenance. He comes to a grim conclusion. If such a sword breaks, it can no longer be put back together. Carolina holds the sword fragment in her hands. With tears in her eyes, she thanks Ice and apologizes for not having time to say goodbye. Villain and Polo are stunned to see what remains of the holy Iceberg sword. Carolyn wonders if this is its core. The young man explains that this is where the source of the sword's power lies. He confidently declares to Carolina that he will definitely try to restore it. Caroline asks hopefully if he can do it. Will avoids a direct answer. If he makes even one mistake, he could personally take the lives of her family. She says that life without a sword is the same as death for her. Will looks at her with sympathy. He understands perfectly well how difficult this task is, because even his mentor was unable to restore the sacred sword. But despite everything, he bravely takes on this task. An incredible ritual of restoration begins. Caroline, with tears in her eyes, begs for the sword to return to her again. We will get the full outline of this iceberg. It determines exactly what needs to be done, how to process the material, and immediately starts the recovery process. Will combines 5 manufacturing skills from his ancestors and discovers a completely new, unique skill. He shouts with determination and strikes, using his new ability, Regeneration. Meanwhile, Reika wonders what kind of creature the ice heroine locked away with her sword, sacrificing herself. She orders the military to immediately open fire on the creature that has escaped from its icy captivity. The man says that the monster has recovered, and this worries him greatly. Reika bursts forward, boldly charging into battle and giving the monster a taste of her formidable lightning snake. Her attack hits the monster, causing it to cry then pain. She asks him with a grin if it feels good. The monster grabs the soldiers with its tentacles, and also shouts at them not to touch them, because these tentacles suck all the strength out of people. Reika realizes that the electric current could kill her, so she orders everyone to retreat. Soon the ice barrier will melt. Reika, with a determined look, announces that she will now use the holy sword technique herself. The commander understands perfectly well that this will exhaust her strength and bring the end of the sacred sword closer. But still the army does not hesitate and carries out the order. Reika apologizes to Garon, calling herself an impolite owner, and prepares for the decisive blow. Reika calms the sword, saying there's no need to worry. She made her decision a long time ago, and also thanks him for the unforgettable and exciting fights. She screams, and at the same moment she awakens her power, the divine eye of the Lord of Time. Reika decides to show the true power of her sacred artifact and unleashes its full power. She uses her strongest technique, Electric Emperor, World Serpent, and directs all of her power directly at the monster. After the attack, she hangs helplessly in the air. She apologizes to the sword, realizing that everything is behind her. Suddenly, a strange portal opens in the air, from which a hand with a hammer protrudes, and everyone freezes in surprise, unable to believe their eyes. She doesn't understand at all what's happening right now. Will appear next to her. Suddenly, the dragon Lorie appears and unleashes a barrage of incredibly powerful blows on the monster. Will looks carefully at the defeated monster and thoughtfully says that it is a real weapon. For its owner, it is not just a protector but something more than a friend. It is a real family. With tears of joy, Carolina embraces her returned friend, the faithful Iceberg, holding him tightly to her. It will dress up as a monster and ask, does he get pleasure from destroying weapons that mean a lot to someone? His face twisted with rage, and he declared with hatred that he was incredibly angry right now. Reika shouts to Will to be careful. The monster has already swung its tentacles and is preparing to attack. Reika pounced on the tentacle, but warned, if she cut it, something might happen. She is shocked to see that the tentacle did not regenerate for the first time after her blow. Reika looks with admiration at the teacher who not only repaired her sword, but also made it much better. The woman warns her friend to be careful. These tentacles are cursed with a curse that sucks the life out of any artifacts. Suddenly, the real body of the monster appears right in front of them. The hero sees with horror a huge, ferocious lion god before him. A team of brave heroes rushes into battle against a terrible monster. Polo exclaims that there are too many enemies and orders everyone to retreat. Vil activates his ultra-dense body modification ability and announces that he will face the lion himself. He challenges the huge lion, urging it to come closer. We will easily repel the attack of the monster's huge paw. He explains that this technique transforms his cells for a while, making him superhuman. Lorie says that this lion is just like her, possessed by an evil spirit and exhausted by it. A hideous red stone immediately catches the eye on the lion's forehead. The young man explains that the stone is embedded directly in the lion's brain. If it is removed, the animal will die. Reika understands. This is almost the same thing that happened to her eye. A terrible picture appears before his eyes. The giant lion god erupts with a fierce roar. Will promises that he will soon help him and relieve him of his suffering. He uses his most powerful techniques, destroying everything in his path, and then uses his incredible ability to restore, as if grinding the chaos into something new. Val decides not to delay and deals a powerful blow to the monster. When the smoke clears, the girls are relieved to see that Will is safe and sound. Will smiles and reassures the lion that it's okay, because he destroyed the cursed eye. Then he advises it to rest for a while. Suddenly, it turns out that this lion is actually a girl. Will is genuinely stunned. He was sure all this time that he was talking to a boy. Will makes sure that she is alive. The lion girl thanks him with relief. He did not kill her, but saved her. She thanks him and flies high into the sky, hoping that one day their paths will cross again. Despite the fact that the lioness girl is considered a rival, Will realizes with embarrassment, God turned out to be much more alive than he thought. But from the wreckage of the monster, a real enemy suddenly appears, screaming in a frenzy, forbidding anyone to treat him so impudently. The real villain could not understand why his cursed artifact was destroyed, while the lion god remained alive. Will finally admits that he came out of hiding. He suspected that he was being watched while he was hiding in the dungeon. The villain is amazed at how well-designed Villeneuve's city is, but assures him that he knows nothing about it. He only slightly changed the structure of the artifact. Vil coldly remarks that this thing is only playing with human lives and is not worth fixing. The artifact proudly calls itself a Sukumagami. Sukumagami reveals his grand plan, to destroy all the artifacts in the world, and no orders will stand in his way. But Will decides to intervene himself and takes it upon himself to stop him, vowing to destroy the enemy. Sukumagami rushes to attack, but the girl resolutely stands in front of Will and exclaims that they will protect him at all costs. But Vil shouted to them that this was not allowed. If they touched the attack, the sky above their heads might collapse. Since it is impossible to attack directly, Vil decides to use his Iron Forest skill. The heroine could not believe that she had managed to pass by the Iron Forest. There was an explosion, and the girls were called pitchforks. Sukumagami mockingly told the hero that all his efforts were in vain. He said that gods like them remained unmoved, because no human thing could hurt them. Then the blacksmith put the golden hand into action. He rushed headlong into the Sukumagami, activating his technique. The hero sought to change the course of events. He understood that only sacred weapons could defeat the god. We decisively turn on the connection with Mjolnir. God responded by threatening to crush the blacksmith's hammer into fine dust. The hero boldly plunged the sacred sword into the monster. Sukumagami felt the effects of the sacred weapon on himself. It brought him unbearable pain and true horror. The creature wondered where Vil got the holy sword from, since a hero can only have one sacred weapon. Perhaps there is something else mysterious. The young man confidently confirmed God's words. He said that he really only has one true holy weapon, pointing to his hammer. Vi said that he was the creator of this sacred weapon. He forged a sacred blade, for only such a weapon could wound the god himself. Herzog and Mugami couldn't understand. Was this really a fake? The hero decided to take advantage of something he didn't like at all, even though he really didn't want to. He tirelessly practiced his new skill, creating forgeries again and again. The creature could not believe that there really were an infinite number of them. We will tell you that inside this cube are stored memories of a sacred weapon that was once created by the previous owners of the Golden Hand. The hero said that as long as he had enough magic, he could create copies and temporarily summon these fakes. After that, he turned all his weapons against the monster. They were heading straight for Sukumagami. The beastman could not believe that all these fakes were truly sacred weapons. The girl began to list several of them. She recognized Gungnir and Agate Excalibur. The dragon called this reign of forged blacksmith blades a veritable museum of sacred weapons. Let's declare that this is the end of it. The weapon crushed the monster. Sukumagami shouted that he couldn't let it all end like this. The beast woman shouted to the blacksmith, warning him of the danger in the dungeon. The hero became so bold that he directed the power of the dungeon directly at God himself. The creation teetered on the brink of destruction. Sukumagami was surprised to learn that the blacksmith was even able to create a replica of the dungeon. He will explain that all these short-lived fakes disappear almost instantly after appearing. The hero apologizes to the monster and deals him the final blow. Sukumagami was defeated, but in the end, he still managed to threaten Hapasai that the sevenfold blessed house would definitely defeat him. The hero turned away, not wanting to witness the death of the god. The girls greeted Will. Burrow naively offered the blacksmith some food. Carolina sternly ordered her to stay away from the hero. The one-eyed girl also asked everyone to step back from her mentor. She declared that she would treat the teacher herself. Caroline objected, noting that the warrior had not yet won, to which she was told that it was none of her business. Burrow asked everyone not to quarrel. She assured him that she would be able to handle it all on her own. Waking up, the young man stopped the girls and announced that his magical powers had been restored, so now he could eat on his own. The girls advised him to rest and not to strain himself too much. Seeing that a small argument had broken out between the girls, he timidly asked if they got along well with each other or, on the contrary, not very well. Someone told him that everything was fine. It was the goddess Artemis herself. She had come to make sure Will was okay. The goddess personally asked the hero about his well-being. As a sign of support and concern, Artemis took the blacksmith's hand. She sincerely asked the young man to undergo a thorough examination, because for her he was a true treasure of her entire kingdom. Lady Iceberg objected in surprise. She turned to Her Majesty in confusion, asking when Vil had become part of the Empire. The girl added that the Hapasai came from the kingdom. She asked Artemis not to make the hero the property of the Empire. Vil objected to the girl, explaining that he had already received the title of nobleman from the Empire. The warrior could not believe that all this was real. Tears welled up in her eyes. Was her lover now serving the Empire? Now that Will was no longer the hero of the kingdom, the girl felt sad and devastated. She was on the verge of tears, but the young man calmed her down, assuring her that everything was okay. The warrior will be promised that he will take care of her too. At first, the girl did not understand what the blacksmith meant. Carolina felt real shame. Her cheeks flushed, and she felt embarrassed. Caroline was so embarrassed that she quickly ran out of the room to take a short walk in the fresh air and regain her senses. Will asked Artemis why she was so happy. He assumed it was because they had managed to deal with the sacred sword. The girls just looked at each other in confusion, not understanding what was going on. Her Majesty declared that Vil, who saved the Empire from an unprecedented threat, could no longer be loyal to another country. He was now a great hero of the Empire. The young man noticed that the famous hero spoke too loudly when addressing him. To this, Leek objected, saying that he did not raise his voice at all. The girl admitted that if her teacher had not appeared then, the Empire would definitely have perished, because the power of Sukumagami had become much more powerful. The girls bowed to the hero, sincerely admitting that they were infinitely grateful to him. The young man was surprised because he had imagined this situation completely differently. Will assured me that he hadn't done anything special. The hero said that everything just worked out extremely well, both for him and for this Sukumagami. He added that the sacred weapon was indeed powerful, but he himself was not particularly strong. All the girls looked at him in surprise and laughed at the fact that he stubbornly and consistently refused to accept their compliments. They said that the hero was somehow unusual and even a little eccentric. Sirekel was brutally pushed out of the house and told, "Get out of here!" She knocked on the door with all her might, begging to be let back in and given another chance. The girl admitted through tears that she had no one else to rely on. She begged everyone to help her, but instead of any words, she was simply shown a wide-open page of the newspaper. Sirak was shown a newspaper article that said that the Hassan Trading Company was on the verge of bankruptcy. They ironically remarked that if they had engaged in counterfeiting goods, they would have gone bankrupt a long time ago. The girl was ordered to leave, but she did not despair and again asked to wait a bit. Sirakal, barely holding back tears, tried to explain that the craftsmen don't visit them at all, so no one buys the goods. The girl regretfully admitted that she could do nothing more to help. Despair gripped Circle. She realized that she had reached the very edge, and there was nowhere to fall any further. But there was only one hope left. The girl realized. Now she had only one thing left to turn to. Her ex-boyfriend. She picked up the newspaper that had been thrown out of the house with her. People walked slowly through the city, but among them stood out one person who was completely unlike the others. Everything was already decided, and a heavy burden rested on his shoulders. In his free hand he held something unusual. The boy laughed softly. He watched the passers-by on the street, mentally calling them customers. The young man was amazed at how many people had gathered here. He stopped right at the middle of the street and asked the people not to disperse. He loudly announced to everyone around him that he had all the things they had been waiting for so impatiently. The warrior and the wizard decided to stop nearby to look for something useful. Seth noted with pleasure that they had been lucky today. The sword contained all the weapons he had created himself. Among all the weapons, people immediately recognized Excalibur, Aegis, and Bavoga. The pleased blacksmith explained that all of these items were true legends, and each of them cost only 1,000 gold. The warrior could not believe that Excalibur was being sold for only 1,000 gold coins. Seaton believed that buyers would be more likely to grab weapons, because they were just ordinary stones collected right on the road. The young man dreamed of becoming rich and building a happy life with Siraka. The magician created a crystal so that the warrior could verify whether his sword was real. The warrior admitted that his first spell was not suitable for Excalibur, but he really wanted to try it out. Seaton did not object. The sword pierced the crystal through and through. The warrior was amazed. The crystal shattered into pieces, leaving behind a perfectly even sword mark. Seaton was delighted with his object. He laughed loudly, but there was a tension in his laughter, as if he were teetering on the edge of madness. Seeing the result, people rushed headlong to the pile of weapons. They were amazed by both the prices and the variety, so everyone wanted to buy up every last one. The blacksmith only added fuel to the fire. In his own words, he gave the fakes the glory of legendary weapons. Suddenly everyone, both the blacksmith and the crowd, turned their attention to the warrior. Seaton advised him not to rush and assured him that if the warrior really wanted to buy this Excalibur, 1,000 gold coins would be enough. However, the warrior immediately refused. The warrior showed off a sword with a damaged blade after a blow and called it a fake. He had no intention of paying for such a weapon. Rumor has it that the legendary Excalibur wouldn't crack at all if you just cut through an icicle with it. People finally realized that all these visible tools were just fakes. The blacksmith scolded the young man for his words, noting that even a roof tile with a ridge could break. But the warrior objected. If the sword was truly legendary, then its power could be felt immediately, as soon as you picked it up. That did not happen with this sword. The warrior threw the sword, and it instantly shattered into small pieces. The man finally announced that it was a fake. In addition, he noted that the blacksmith had never seen this legendary weapon with his own eyes. The crowd shouted that Setin was not a true master. People angrily warned him not to even think of deceiving them. The blacksmith dared to go out to the people. He tried to convince them that it was not a fake at all. The young man said that he works as a foreman at the Hassan company and has extraordinary abilities. People recognized the name of Hassan's company. They remembered that their troubles had just been reported in today's newspaper. People started to loudly complain that Hassan Trading was selling fakes. Everyone said they would never buy anything from there again. They were called frauds. Seaton tried to convince both them and himself that this was not true. He turned on the artifact. The young man exclaimed indignantly that he had no lack of talent. Suddenly Cyril appeared and attacked Seaton at the top of her voice. She indignantly asked what he was doing there. The guy recognized this girl. She got angry, screamed, "How could he let this happen?" He exclaimed that he just wanted to save Hassan's company. Cyril called him stupid and told him to stop acting recklessly. She handed him a newspaper clipping and said there was only one way to fix things. She asked the boy to return Will to the kingdom. The girl offered to go to him together and sincerely apologize. She also showed him a newspaper that wrote about the hero who saved the empire, Will Craft. But instead, he just pushed the girl along with the newspaper. Grey Cole was in great pain. She howled in pain. The girl tried to figure out what the boy was doing. She reminded him that she was carrying his child under her heart. Vila repeated this word several times and wondered what it meant. He shouted that he couldn't take it anymore. The girl did not understand at all what nonsense her lover was talking about. She tried to explain. If he came back, everything would be the same again. Will's brother exclaimed that he would rather die than go and ask for his forgiveness. He was enraged by the thought that his brother was a great hero. He was annoyed that he himself knew nothing about the legendary weapon. The whole burden of this curse fell on him. The young man asked his girlfriend what exactly she didn't like about him being with her. Cyril gave the blacksmith a sharp slap on the cheek, which surprised him greatly. She declared that she did not like anything at all. Suddenly, The girl's words merged in Seaton's mind with what his grandfather and father had said earlier. They all said the same thing. He had no talent. He had. The young man froze in surprise. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. He wasn't prepared for such frankness from his girlfriend. Hearing these words, Cyril finally breathed a sigh of relief. She couldn't stand being in the square any longer and ran away. The boy crawled after her on all fours, begging her not to leave him. She suddenly stopped and firmly declared that Seton must stay here. The girl said she would go to him herself and apologize. The young man tried to stop her, but he never succeeded. He constantly thought about talent and berated himself for not having it. Seton was in despair. He activated the artifact and his hand glowed with energy. The crowd carefully assessed what had happened. The people understood that everything was very serious and ordered the knights to be called immediately. The blacksmith laughed sinisterly and agreed to return his brother. Seton decided to take Vilist's talents for himself. A train filled with passengers was racing along the rails. Cyril thought thoughtfully about Vila. A little girl's doll broke on the train and she started complaining to her mother. A passenger nearby wondered how to fix the toy, since there were no needles or threads at hand. One of the passengers objected that sewing supplies were not really necessary. The man with the golden hands gently fixed the doll, explaining that if something is broken, that's what you should do. Take it apart and repair it. Cyril mastered this method. The doll was repaired. The girl asked the doll's savior if he was a wizard. He smiled and replied that no, he was not a wizard. The girl suggested that the man must be a toy dealer. He smiled and replied that something like that could indeed be said about him. The girl's mother thanked the craftsman for his help. The man smiled back and said that it was a small matter, so they had nothing to worry about. He explained that he was unable to pass by someone's grief and ignore the trouble. Cyril suspected something. She asked the stranger if he was the famous blacksmith everyone was talking about. She pointed to the master's hand, thinking it was his golden hand. The man became wary. The girl remembered that Vil had a special power in his right hand. She wondered if this man had the same ability. Cyril apologized for his inappropriate question. She sadly asks if this man could work at her company. The stranger laughed in response. He said he had already heard about the Hassan company and its dire situation. The girl was surprised how this man knew her name. She became wary. The mentor apologized to the girl, speaking gently to her. He honestly admitted that he had no plans to join any organization. The man said that he was now setting out to create something new. The girl noticed that this stranger looked remarkably like Will. She understood the owner. Cyril said that she was even carrying a child under her heart, but she could not help in any way and sincerely apologized. The man replied that a child is something special, because among all the things created by humans, it is the most interesting. The girl was struck by the word creation. The owner suggested that the girl take something of her choice. The man said that if he ate this, his soul would feel better. But he emphasized again that he could not simply close his eyes to misfortune. After such an examination and analysis, it became clear how serious the hero's injuries were. The girl hesitated a little, but finally dared to taste the candy she had been given. It seemed to Kola as if she had instantly found herself in a completely different world, an extraordinarily beautiful one. The girl wondered what it was. She felt incredible happiness. Tears welled up in her eyes from the emotion. The mentor was satisfied. Cyril was relaxed and content, feeling a pleasant pleasure. The man said it was time for him to go, and after saying goodbye, he left the company. The passenger wanted to tell the stranger that this train only stops in the capital of the empire, and then at the very end station. The master calmly assured her that everything was fine. He sincerely thanked the woman for her concern, and the man mysteriously hinted to the girls to take good care of their doll. The friends said goodbye to each other. The girl's mother remarked that this man was a true gentleman. Suddenly, the explosion covered the girl and her mother with a powerful wave. Cyril, lost in her thoughts and disconnected from reality, didn't even notice the explosion, but she was still affected by it. The explosion thundered right on the track where the train was moving. The train derailed due to an accident. To quickly tell everyone about people, reaching everyone. The entire train lay overturned on its side. The bodies of the dead were visible all around. The catastrophe was striking in its scale, and the master seemed to have lost his mind. He was merrily humming some melody under his breath. This terrible tragedy with the train was a real beauty for him. He admired his creation with delight. The stranger laughed. He called this disaster a tragedy created by a family of 7 lucky people. The boy seemed completely out of his mind. A winged creature flew up to the train, which had just stopped. The very dragon that Will and his friends wrote their stories about. Seeing the scale of the disaster, he was speechless with shock. The young man sighed and said that this was all just terrible. Burrow asked what they should do next, or perhaps wait for Imperial rescuers. Raleigh suggested they take the wounded out immediately. Will asked them to wait a bit, as he was still figuring out what was happening. The dragon warned, If we do not act quickly, there will be even more victims. So, the blacksmith lost his patience and decided to finish the job immediately. The man activated the golden hand and directed its power at the train. He immediately understood who had suffered what injuries. Someone had suffered a cardiac arrest at the scene of the accident, another had ruptured internal organs, another was pregnant, and someone else had suffered a brain hemorrhage. After careful examination and analysis, it became apparent how serious the hero's injuries were. He activates full recovery with his hammer. The passengers on this train gradually calmed down. Everything returned to its place, as it was before. Burrow admired the man for his ability to fix things right the first time. However, he was confused by the beast woman's strange behavior. The hero decided that he had succeeded because his level had increased, but what pleased him most was the smiles of the people he saved. For him, that was the best reward, more valuable than any promotion or title. Suddenly, someone recognized him and called his name loudly. It was Sirikol who addressed the hero who was riding the dragon. The young man recognized the girl. Surprise flashed across his face. Hope shone in her eyes. She felt her knees. The girl begged his forgiveness. She sincerely admitted her guilt to the hero and looked truly repentant and sad. She cried, and the dragon flew away into the distance. Suddenly, Will approached Sirikol and called her. He asked her to stand up and held out his hand, offering help with a friendly smile. Kuznets said that all the passengers on the train should be thoroughly examined at the capital's hospital. The girl was shocked by this news. She was still crying. Will said that since Sirikol was pregnant, she would be sent to the hospital first. I planted her and took care of her. She again began to apologize to the hero, admitting that she had done wrong. She crawled on the ground, stammering, begging for forgiveness. And suddenly she completely fainted. The hero could not hide his delight. The passengers were placed on the backs of the dragons. The women and children were flown first, while the others were asked to wait for the Imperial Rescue Squad to arrive. The dragon rose into the sky and flew away. The hero saw him off, noticing that he was worried about something. After that, he decided to inspect the train. The boys carefully examined the train's rails and wheels. Vila Fata seemed strange, but he noticed that there were no anomalies on the green road. He assumed that the accident could have been staged by someone. The blacksmith assumed that there was magic involved here. Burrow became wary. The hero noticed something. The girl didn't understand what happened, but she saw how the guy became wary and asked what happened. He noticed smoke in one of the compartments. Will asked Burrow if she had noticed any black fog on the train. The girl replied that she had not seen anything like it. This meant that only the hero could see the fog. Noticing how the black fog continued to spread, he followed it. Burrow and Will looked up at the sky, following the misty streak stretching into the distance. The black mist reached the dragon that was carrying the fugitives. The train passengers, now flying on the dragon's back, held on with all their might, trying not to be blown away by the fierce wind created by the speed of this amazing creature. The passenger in the stroller held tightly to the doll that the mysterious stranger had ordered her to protect. The same black mist slowly spread from the doll. A sense of foreboding gripped Will. He knew he and Horo must return to the Imperial capital immediately. They ran as fast as they could. The boys moved forward, applying their blacksmithing skills. His suspicions were confirmed. The black fog slowly moved towards the hospital where the train victims were being treated. They will awaken the horror and stop her. The girl noticed that the teleportation crystal worked incredibly fast. They quickly burst into the building. It turned out that even those who were in the hospital with Horo didn't notice the fog. The blacksmith quickly climbed the stairs. Sirikol recognized him, but he had no idea why he was there. We went out into the room where black smoke was coming from. The hero grabbed the handle and resolutely opened the door. The entire room was enveloped in clouds of ominous smoke. The young man was seized with genuine terror. The girl sat sadly on her mother's bed. Black ribbons stretched from her, fanning the woman who lay motionless. 2 flowers on the windowsill hinted that one of those present had already passed away. The black shackles almost completely clamped the woman in a vice. The girl suddenly interrupted her story and quietly said that her mother was no longer moving. Horo rushed towards the girl, asking if she was hurt. Will immediately warned him not to come any closer. He pointed to the object the girl was holding in her hands. It was from there that the black shackles and thick black fog erupted. It was just a damn doll. We immediately understand that this doll was a cursed object. He realized that this curse belonged to the same category as the curse of the lion gods. Therefore, it brought misfortune to everyone who was nearby. The hero asked the girl if she would lend him her doll for a minute. The girl confidently replied that she would not give it up under any circumstances. The young man tried to gain the girl's trust by presenting himself as a doctor for dolls. The girl was surprised to learn that he was also a puppet doctor. But the master was alarmed by her words, because they contained the mysterious also. The young man turned to the doll and said that it was painful in this state. He again suggested that the girl fix the toy. The little girl carefully held out her thing, as if it were something very valuable. Will was angered that someone had turned the doll that the child had so valued into a cursed object. Has he already started the curse removal? To the blacksmith, this seemed an unforgivable betrayal. He was sincerely indignant and furious. In his passion, he wanted to destroy the doll and created anew. The curse disappeared, and the toy turned into a magical doll again. The girl's mother came to her senses. The dried flower on the windowsill also came to life. This became a sign of the woman's complete healing. The girl rushed to her mother, who could not understand what had happened to her. She pointed to the heroes. They gave the girl a toy. He called it a dry doll, which, he said, would now bring good luck to everyone around him. Burrow was amazed that the doll's hair shone with light. The girl told her mother that this young man had fixed her toy. The hero asked the woman if anyone else had touched the doll. The girl's mother said that the doll's head came off on the magic train, but they fixed it. The girl added that he was a good guy with his face covered, hidden under bandages. Let's try to imagine this man in a mask in our imagination. He thanked the girl for her sincerity. The woman objected, saying that she should thank the hero. But he replied that the doll, not he, had overcome the illness. The mother and the girl were so surprised that for a moment they even forgot about everything around them. The doll replied that the healing was made possible by Will, the master puppeteer. The little girl was delighted when her doll started talking. But the little girl's mother was even a little scared. But the blacksmith was most surprised. He could not understand how this had happened. The toy told him that it had been made by a master, but that master himself was very eccentric. Hora was delighted that her mentor had managed to breathe life into the doll. To her, it seemed like a real miracle. The hero explained his actions, saying that he only turned the toy's curse into a blessing. Sirakal watched all this and was amazed. Before her eyes, a man rose from the dead, and a doll came to life. She immediately understood. Something divine was at work here. The girl heard someone's cries. It was the boy whose leg she had healed. He was enthusiastically showing his mother that she was already moving her leg. Circula was also genuinely surprised. Real miracles began to happen in the hospital. Someone's heart pain suddenly disappeared. Someone regained their sight and could finally see the faces of their friends. Someone was predicted to live only 3 months, and now the doctors were already preparing him for discharge. A man with a red cross and a holy book witnessed miracles and proclaimed, "It seemed as if God himself had come down to earth." Sirakal finally understood that all these miraculous healings were possible thanks to the doll Will had made and its special blessing. Now she understood what an incredible craftsman the blacksmith was. She was overcome with sadness as she realized her loss. The doll entertained the children by putting on a real show for them. She even showed off her dancing skills. Sirakal finally admitted to herself that she really wanted Will back and to be by his side. The doll looked surprisingly cute. The children were interested in watching the toy come to life before their eyes. Suddenly, the girl called the owner. This was a real surprise for him. The beast man immediately tensed up, ready to act if the need arose. With moist eyes, Sirakal confessed that she had been looking for Vil for a very long time. She had important news to tell him. Horo didn't like it at all. Kovalenko apologized to the girl, explaining that he was busy at the moment and was just about to leave. Sirakil continued this conversation. She apologized again for kicking him out. She said that after Will left, Hassan's profits dropped sharply, and Seaton no longer had time to fulfill all the orders. The girl didn't even want to imagine that the common cause they had worked so hard to build could fall apart so easily. The young man was only irritated by his old friend's remarks. Sirakal assured that if she returned, the client would return as well. She again approached the hero with a request to return to her. The young man abruptly refused her offer. The girl was surprised by his answer. She was sure that he was still offended by her. The girl, almost losing hope, began to tease him. She confessed her feelings to him, but immediately confessed to the betrayal. Then she asked if he was really angry with her. Horo was tired of putting up with this and flared up with anger. The beast woman besieged Sirakal. She screamed wildly that she had had enough of them. Horo shouted that first the girl had betrayed Mr. Will, and now she was asking him to come back. She ordered her to stop this bullying. Soraka didn't understand why Beastman was here. She thought with fear that Horror was a girl from another company, and to offend her, she called that company some incomprehensible office. In response to the insults, the Beast Girl said that it was her life that would be saved. Goro assured that she understood her master better than anyone. Cerebral was filled with anger. She couldn't believe that the blacksmith now had another girl. In her indignation, she called him a traitor. The beast woman angrily shouted in response that Hassan was the traitor, because he was the one who left their town. Sirakal did not back down. Horo explained that the master had a very important mission, so he didn't feel like socializing with women right now. Vil had no intention of interfering in their conversation. Cyril fell to her knees again, overcome with despair. She begged Vil to come back. The girl admitted that she was powerless to change anything. She asked the blacksmith if he would worry if his son suddenly disappeared. The blacksmith just sighed and said that it was too late to change anything. The girl listened carefully to the master's words. He remembered how Sirakail herself had always said that Hassan was her companion. So the girl's success is only her own merit. He has nothing to do with it. Therefore, all these difficulties must be solved by Sirakail. Will firmly assured that there was nothing between him and that girl anymore. Kolo burst into tears and, stammering, was angry with herself. Why had she done such a senseless thing? In despair, she began to beg forgiveness from Will, Satan, and the unborn child, not knowing who she was more guilty of. She sadly realized that everything was behind her. Suddenly, something inexplicable happens to the girl. Her stomach begins to rapidly inflate, as if enveloped by a strange, pulsating plasma. The mother and the girl, who remained in the room, looked around in fear, not understanding what was happening. Cyril screamed that she was in incredible pain. The bullet almost completely engulfed the girl. The blacksmith noticed a black mist beginning to emanate from the bullet. We asked Cyril if she has communicated with anyone who hid their face under a cloth. The girl sobbed softly, lost in her own numbness. She barely uttered a few words, telling him that it was this man who had treated her to a delicious lollipop on the magic train. The master discovered another terrible deed committed by this stranger. A luminous sign appeared above the ball. It turned into something like a portal. A portal just opened from the Siricles' belly. Someone was coming out of there. Through the portal, a baby of incredible size appeared. He fell to the floor and hit his head hard. He cried and crawled to the boys. The baby was crying loudly, and even if it weren't for its tiny size, it still looked weak and sickly. Siracil had a pleasant appearance. The baby, looking for his mother, headed towards the frightened children. The man rushed to help the woman and her daughter. They managed to jump back together so that the baby wouldn't touch them. The baby cried loudly. The boys jumped back to a safe distance in time. The mother and daughter were safe and sound. They ran out, shouting loudly that a monster had appeared in the hospital and that adventurers needed to be called immediately. Goro and Will returned to the room where the baby is acting up again. Cyril was terrified. She could not believe that this was her child, since it was not yet time to give birth. The girl was confused. The baby noticed the girl and crawled towards her, joyfully exclaiming, "Mommy!" Cyril screamed, calling him a monster, and began waving her arms in front of him. The child was even more offended and became even more upset. The child screamed so loudly that her scream turned into a powerful wave that knocked the other children off their feet. A loud crash shattered a vase of flowers and cracked a window. Let's try to describe what the magic of sound is. He understood that it was just a cry, not a spell. But the magical power emanating from him was so powerful that he himself was no longer sure of his suspicions. Horo didn't understand what this magical power really meant. The blacksmith suggested that it was the curse of the disguised man that was the cause of all this magical confusion. Cyril remembered the candy a stranger had given her. The baby was still crying and calling for his mother, still wanting to eat. Now let's see what happens to the girl. He said that even if the parents are not the best people, their child is not to blame for this. The master said that only Cyril is the true mother of this child. The girl tried to understand what he meant. The child seemed very upset. The girl said that indeed, this baby was not guilty of anything. She crawled towards him. Siracula gently touched the baby to calm him down. She asked him for forgiveness, even though it was she who gave him life. The baby gradually began to calm down. When he realized that Cyril was his mother, he hugged her tightly, unable to hold back his emotions. Horo and Vil were worried about the girl at first, but after making sure that everything ended well, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, adventurers came running. They had been warned by the locals, and now they were chasing after the frog-like monster. They ordered everyone to attack and use magic against the baby. The spell flew past the mage and the beast woman, heading straight for the infant. Circle manages to reach the baby. She covered the child with her, protecting it from the blow. The magic hit the girl right in the face. She fell to the floor. Will and terror mingled in a sudden shock. They didn't even have time to come to their senses. The kid saw with his own eyes what happened to his mother. He became very upset again and started crying. The adventurers looked at each other in confusion, not understanding what was happening. The baby emitted an even more powerful sound wave, aimed directly at the approaching mages. A magical explosion on the screen stunned everyone, destroying the room itself. Suddenly, the recovery skill icon appeared. It was Will who picked up the hammer and used it. The adventurers still couldn't figure out what was happening here. Order and symmetry reigned in the room, and only a white mist reminded of any changes. The men asked each other in surprise what had happened, because everything seemed completely normal again. We'll start calling them names. He was terribly angry because of the adventurers' actions. The teacher shouted at them loudly, demanding to explain why they were clinging to the child. The frightened adventurers did not know what to answer him, so they fled in silence. Koro noticed that these boys were surprisingly rude. They didn't even notice that Sirikol had already completely recovered. Not a single wound remained, and her clothes were as good as new. The girl regained consciousness and suddenly realized that she no longer felt pain. When she saw Will, she thought he had fixed everything again. There she saw the baby, who had already regained his usual appearance. The child was shouting happily, calling for its mother. She could not believe her eyes and was infinitely happy that the baby had taken on human form. Magical energy was left inside the child. The blacksmith believed that the time would come and the baby would be able to master it. The master and Hora decided to leave. Sirikal noticed this and quickly ran out after them, asking them not to rush. The girl sincerely thanked Will for protecting her child. The teacher replied bitterly that he did not do it for Sirikal's sake at all. The boys left. The girl burst into tears again and asked her ex-girlfriend for forgiveness. She was filled with shame for her own behavior. Despite everything, she sincerely thanked Willie for saving the child. She didn't have time to say anything more. Siarakla called the baby, and she was distracted. The girl longed to return home because her father, Sechin, was already waiting for them there. However, no one was waiting for them there. The guards immediately locked him in the royal capital prison. He was to remain there until orders were received regarding bail. Seaton became concerned and turned to a fake mentor. He stubbornly insisted that he had real talent. The cellmate asked the newcomer not to scream. The stranger remarked that it was really sad that the boy was trying so hard and no one even paid attention to him. Only Seth paid attention to him. He shouted to the master, demanding something more powerful. He declared that he needed talent. The teacher objected, saying he had already given him the most powerful weapon, but that wasn't enough for Seaton. The young man felt that everyone around him was laughing at him. This frightened and terrified him, and he found himself in despair. Then the master said that he would simply take it from everyone's hands. He touched the ugly, deformed hand of the horn. The cellmate couldn't calmly watch what was happening to the novice, so he decided to call the knights for help. Suddenly there was an explosion in the prison. The young man's hand changed even more. The boy exclaimed that he would take all hands from everyone without exception. The teacher declared that this was Seaton's talent. He wanted the young man to demonstrate all his abilities. Chaos reigned in the city. People fled in panic, escaping Seaton, who was destroying everything in his path. The blacksmith was incredibly pleased with his new strength. Now he could break buildings as easily as if they were made of wet paper. A soldier from the square ordered him to stop. The warrior immediately realized that Seaton was only pretending to be a real master. He used the slashing strike skill. But Seaton unexpectedly used his new hand, and it confused the warrior. The imposter master effortlessly dispersed the crowd of those who tried to attack him. The young man grabbed their hands. The people screamed, discovering that their abilities were no longer working, and unbearable pain coursed through their bodies. With a smile, he told them the news. From now on, their hands belonged only to him. Suddenly, a warrior jumped out of the bushes and rushed at the young man. She drew her sword and struck with lightning speed. The girl managed to touch the blacksmith. She cut off several hands. Seaton was amazed, because he had no idea that such a thing was even possible. The girl firmly declared that her task was to protect this city. She said that she leads a guild of the highest, S level. Seton only laughed in response. At first, the girl didn't understand what was happening, but suddenly her hands simply disappeared. First, the guildmaster lost both of her arms. Then the blacksmith's arm swallowed her whole. The young man shouted that he had eaten her hands. He was pleased that even an S-rank master was now at his fingertips. The entire city lay in ruins. A little girl was trapped under the rubble of a collapsed house. A woman rushed to her aid, desperately calling for help from everyone around. Suddenly, someone approached them. As expected, Seaton ordered the woman to leave. He firmly declared that he would save the girl alone. The woman screamed at the monster, ordering it to stay away from them. The man declared that her words were too cold for such a worthless woman. A message appeared on the screen, making it clear. There was no point in living any longer. Suddenly, a strange crater appeared. Seth noticed it immediately. After leaving there, we immediately headed to that woman. He said that the girl's wound had already healed and they should urgently escape from here. The woman thanked him sincerely. The many-armed monster immediately recognized his older brother. They were greeted coldly and without much enthusiasm. The hero asked if Seaton had managed to pull all this off in the city. He confirmed this with a joyful smile. The monster proudly declared that it was the greatest thing she had ever created. He said with relief that he no longer felt like the worthless younger brother. Wheelcraft used a golden hand. The master addressed his brothers seriously. He promised that he would defeat Seaton and make him apologize properly. Will emphasized that it was his duty as an older brother. The many-armed man rushed at the blacksmith. shouting that he was worthless and completely powerless. Vil then activated the connection with the divine hammer Mjolnir, and in response rushed to attack his brother. He used the super powerful melting skill, but suddenly one of Seaton's hands slammed into his face. The hero couldn't hold back, was forced to stop the attack and land. We looked at this hand. It was no longer golden. The monster laughed. It already felt like a winner. The blacksmith guessed what had happened to his brother. Seaton had a curse that robbed people of their skills. To confirm his suspicions, he turned to the many-handed one. Seaton confirmed Will's words. His famous golden hand now belonged to him. It became clear to Kovalev that his brother had also seen the man in disguise. The teacher told him that Seaton had turned into a miserable spirit, bound to a cursed artifact with 7 kinds of happiness. However, the younger brother did not want to listen to Will, so he sharply ordered him to be quiet. At this time, Seaton was eager to kill the blacksmith. The younger brother landed a powerful blow on his mentor. Will didn't have time to dodge and flew back. He flew headlong over the water surface in a furious whirlwind. Seth mocked him, mockingly asking if the blacksmith was really going to go into battle with his vaunted golden hand. Will wondered about the lost mark. The monster laughed, because the blacksmith was never able to use the golden hand, so it demonstrated its superiority over itself. I set a trap and am waiting for the golden hand to work. Wilden said nothing, only listened in silence as the armed men threatened that their master would die of his own strength. Seaton launched an endless production of fakes, but nothing happened. The monster couldn't understand why nothing was happening. The divine artifacts weren't appearing, and he didn't understand why at all. We will tell him that he never understood exactly how what he was creating with his own hands worked. The blacksmith added that it is one thing to have skill, but quite another to be able to apply it. Seton was outraged that no one had told him about this before. He asked his mentor if he really had only skills and nothing more. The hero noted that abilities are just a tool. If you don't know how to use them correctly, they will be of no use. Will added that even if Seton knew how to steal other people's abilities, he didn't know how to use them. The young man compared it to a jewel that you hold tightly in your hands but don't know what you need it for. The little girl with the small hands shouted angrily for him to finally shut up. Seth shouted loudly that he would simply destroy everything around him, and that would be the end of it. Will ordered his younger brother to stop immediately. He shouted that he didn't need to understand any structure. He turned on the destruction mode at full power to destroy everything around him. His hand flew up as if by itself. Seton suddenly realized that he could not control his own hand. He realized that this destruction was not going to stop. The boy screamed in terror and couldn't understand what was happening. They will tell you that the power of the destructive technique was insanely powerful, so it had to be used only partially. The hero warned his brother that if he did not stop, it would cost him his life. But Sim warned him not to be arrogant. He declared that he did not want to lose to Will, and was even ready to give his life for it. The hero tried to reach him and convince him to come to his senses. Seth screamed, vowing to kill the blacksmith at any cost. Will screamed, begging the many-armed man to stop. He was just trying to protect himself. Suddenly, the stone hand began to crumble into pieces. Then Bill's friends came to him. For him, it was both a relief and a real salvation. Ask questions about what exactly happened. The teacher's friends were already ready to come to his defense. Goro apologized to the blacksmith for making him wait. Seeing the wound on the master's wrist, she immediately set about treating it. The hero smiled and noted that he had asked the girls to wait for him in the Empire. The girls sincerely replied that he had saved their lives, and now it was their time to thank him for his kindness. They agreed with Beast Woman's answer. He said it helped a lot. He turned to his friends and said he was counting on their support. He asked them to buy him some time. Paralina replied that she was ready to sacrifice herself for the sake of her master. I also added that the depth of the teacher's personality is simply amazing. The boy quickly rushes into the attack, loudly shouting the name Will. Laka uses a skill that causes lightning. Carolina harnessed the power of icebergs. The beastman swiftly charged from above. Used the crescent technique. The hero remembered that even without the skill of the golden hand, he still had his grandfather's hammer. He wondered how special his talent was. We remember well how, as a child, we discovered his 5 special abilities. The first was the ability to impose his will. The second was the close observation of everything around him. The third was the complete restoration of anything. The fourth was the power to destroy everything in its path. And the fifth was the endless creation of fakes. Grandfather explained to him that all these abilities belong to other masters. The golden hand must initially have only one special, unique power. The boy remembered the incredible melting skills his grandfather had. Did you manage to take the guy's hammer? Then Grandpa Crab told the hero that his skill was a real rarity that no one else had. He thought that it might be some undiscovered superpower. Someday, when the boy reached the necessary level of mastery, this unique power would awaken within him. He remembered his grandfather's words again. When the time came, his special power would finally awaken. Then the hero turned to his grandfather with a request to share the hidden powerful gift that lives in the hammer. The blacksmith used his super powerful skill, super fast smelting. He understood. Even without a golden hand on his right, he would create his own divine artifact from scratch. The force had awakened, and Will already knew what he would do next. He personally created a new divine artifact, utilizing his grandfather's unrivaled skill in extraordinary melting. The dragon immediately noticed magic escaping from the wound on Will's arm. The hero asked Rawl to share his skills with him. The dragon assured her that it was not a problem for her, but asked what the owner was going to do. He said that as many as 5 skills were stolen from him, but the troubles didn't end there. We will say that no one could take away this unique ability from him. The girls managed to cut off many of the many-armed mutants' arms. Horo declared in despair that Seaton was a hopeless monster. She said that no matter how much the young man stole other people's skills, inside he would still remain empty and worthless. He replied that those who do not part with their sacred swords and consider themselves heroes are actually no better than him. One of the hands suddenly rushed at Carolina. Hands quickly reached for the sacred swords. The girls noticed that these hands were moving on their own. They took the warrior's weapons away. His strength grew more and more every day. He gained the holy sword skill. Suddenly he noticed that Will was doing something on the sidelines in his own way. The hero finally believed in his own strength. Now he was sure that he could cope. He wondered how many smiles his right hand could give. Seaton couldn't understand why Will was still able to use his skills. It irritated him and he wanted to do anything to stop him. The girls scream and declare that they will not let the monster ruin Will's plans. The dragon also came to the master's defense and ordered the blacksmith to hurry. The hero raised his eyes to the heavens and prayed earnestly, begging to be granted the creation of a divine artifact. Seth attacked Will's friends. He shouted at his brother, forcing him to stop his futile resistance. Seth declared that from now on everything would belong only to him. The hero used 10 Milku Ikigami. He managed to forge the sacred sword of light. The hero happily welcomed the new weapon upon its arrival. He said and thought that it was impossible to create a sacred sword if the abilities were taken away. He will raise the holy weapon above himself. The younger brother indignantly objected. Sacred swords are only given by heaven, and man is not capable of creating them on his own. The hero returned to the boys. He swung a sword of light over them. The girls regained both their hands and their sacred artifacts. Such light seemed to stop the destruction, preventing evil from acting further. The hero said that the power of this sword is capable of restoring everything that has been destroyed. Seaton was indignant and demanded that these words be repeated to him. The many-handed ones said that it would absorb everything around it, and everything would disappear without a trace. Or that if such a thing fell, the capital would be destroyed. Vil used the power of the weapon and summoned a sacred celestial strike charged with sunlight. He unleashed this power against his own brother. The rays of the sword spilled over the city. The curse that weighed on Satan was dispelled under the shower of sunlight. The city rose again from the ruins, and with it the legendary talent of the Golden Hand Vil returned. The city's residents regained their strength. Some were even brought back to life. But people never understood how it all happened and what happened at all. Ice pondered the celestial strike filled with solar power. It seemed to him like a true miracle. Caroline asked what he knew about this mysterious technique. The cat replied that this was a secret technique once used by the great hero Lawrence. It was he who saved the human world from an evil deity. The girl wanted to make sure whether Will was really able to repeat the hero's trick. The Holy Sword replied that the armorer had managed to create the 8th great Holy Sword from nothing, and had also endowed it with the power to heal any wounds. Such an ability was already beyond human capabilities. The hero carefully examined the sword and realized that it was still asleep. So he simply let him go, remarking that the job was done perfectly. Moreau could not believe his eyes. The sword of light turned out to be broken. Let's answer that this weapon simply fell asleep, because it was most likely still very small. A real baby, so it couldn't stay awake for long. Seth realized that his older brother had gained a powerful supernatural power, so limitless that he was now almost like a god. There was a clear look of guilt on his face. The beast woman suddenly shouted at Seaton, asking if he really wanted to argue with him any longer. She began to argue fervently that the master had shown mercy. That was why he had left him alive. But the girl fell silent, watching Will resolutely approach his brother. He asked Setna if he was hurt. The younger brothers admitted that they had never paid much attention to the hero's affairs before. They thought the city was just lucky to have a golden touch. The young man admitted that he had underestimated his older brother all this time. It was a painful realization for him. Seaton was amazed. Even without a golden hand, Vil was capable of performing real miracles worthy of the gods themselves.